Chapter 1791. Cui Xingyuan and Gue Yuhuan, the two geniuses of the heaven-crossing realm, dared to sign up for the Universe Holy War. Their strength was indeed extraordinary. Therefore, Yi Xingqian couldn't hold back his boiling blood and directly jumped into the arena to declare war. No. Can you give me some time to breathe? Knight Emperor seemed to realize it too and added, of course, you can rest for a few days. Okay. Gue Yuhuan said, 3 days later, here, you and I will fight. Although he won, he consumed a lot of spiritual energy, so he needed time to recuperate. Yi Xingqian jumped out of the arena. Let's go. Jun Changshao left with everyone. Who is this guy? How dare he challenge Gue Yuhuan? He looks very unfamiliar. He shouldn't be a local. He's pulling a long face as if we owe him money. The warriors outside the arena began to discuss. Gue Yuhuan looked at the arrogant back that was gradually disappearing and said with a solemn expression, this person's strength is not simple. I'm afraid there will be a hard battle in 3 days. If it were anyone else, he wouldn't accept the challenge. However, after Yi Xingqian came up, his aura and eyes were very strong, so he had the idea of fighting. In the League of Stars and Seas. Gu Tianqing sat in the main hall and said with interest, I heard that your disciple challenged Broken Blade Gue Yuhuan. Yes. Jun Changshao said. This Gue Yuhuan is one of the top geniuses of the heaven-crossing realm. His blade technique is superb, Gu Tianqing said. I'm afraid it will be difficult for your disciple to defeat him. The two haven't fought yet. Uncle Gu, don't jump to conclusions, Goxing said with a smile. It was undeniable that after watching the previous battle, Gue Yuhuan was very strong and definitely not an ordinary peak truth-seeking realm cultivator. However, the disciples of the sect were not ordinary either, not to mention that the one who fought was Yi Xingqian. Jun Patriarch has just come to the heaven-crossing realm, but he already ordered his disciple to challenge a top genius. His courage is commendable, Vice Leader Peng said. The group of higher-ups smiled but did not say anything. Jun Changshao could tell from their expressions that they did not think highly of Yi Xingqian. Understanding. After all, they were all heaven-crossing realm martial artists and were very familiar with Gue Yuhuan. Subjectively, they would definitely be biased towards him and would not be biased towards the disciples who were fighting away from home. Xingqian. After returning to his residence, Jun Changshao called Yi Xingqian over and said with a serious expression, in the battle 3 days later, we must show the glory of the sect of all times. Go Sheng was also a layman who cared about other people's opinions. Therefore, what was originally an ordinary sparring match was immediately elevated to an extremely high level after he said those words. Understood. Yi Xingqian's tone was grave. 3 days later. Many martial artists had gathered at the arena of Star Sea City. Gue Yuhuan was quite famous in the crossing heaven world, so as long as there was a battle with him, it would always attract a lot of spectators. Ta! Ta! Li Qingyang and the others appeared outside the arena wearing the same school uniform. They lined up in 2 rows, facing each other with their hands behind their backs and their chests out. Jun Changshao, who was wearing a mink coat and sunglasses, walked over with a cigar in his mouth. Shua! Xiao Ziji quickly put down his seat and returned to his original position. With his hands behind his back, he shouted with his fellow disciples, the Patriarch is a man of literary and martial virtues. He will benefit the common people and live forever. Everyone's mouth twitched. Where did this lunatic come from? It's him who wants to challenge our Yuhuan. A young girl looked at Yi Xingqian with resentment in her eyes. Humph. Overestimating yourself. A girl next to her said coldly. Obviously, they were Gue Yuhuan's fans. Hey, hey! Someone said unhappily, how did Brother Yuhuan become yours? That's right. Brother Yuhuan belongs to everyone, not just one person. Gue Yuhuan's female fans quarreled. For this situation, the nearby martial artists were already used to it. They were even a little jealous. Whoosh! At this moment, a rainbow light flew over and landed gracefully on the arena. When the light dissipated, Gui Yuhuan stood with his sword in his arms. The breeze blew his hair away, revealing a flawless face. Yuhuan! Yuhuan! The female fans shouted uncontrollably. Their voices were so sharp that the nearby martial artists had to cover their ears. Jun Changshao was speechless. I rehearsed this way for several days, but the limelight was stolen by that guy. No! The next time I appear, I must get a group of disciples to be my fans and let them scream at the top of their lungs. Whoever shouts the loudest will be rewarded with a few more spirit stones. Shoo! Gui Yuhuan made a shushing gesture. In an instant, the fans who seemed to have gone crazy quieted down. Some people couldn't even resist Gui Yuhuan's charming action. They put their hands on their chest and slowly fainted on the ground with a happy smile on their lips. TSK, Yi Xingchen snorted disdainfully. Coincidentally, he was caught by a fan who pointed at him and scolded, "Do you know how hard Brother Yuhuan works? Don't make such a rude expression to him." "I don't know how hard he works." Yi Xingchen stepped onto the arena and said with a cold gaze, "I only know that he's going to be defeated soon." Gui Yuhuan frowned. At that moment, he felt an extremely strong anger. Bang! Yi Xingchen stopped in the arena and held the Fangtian halberd in front of him. He said proudly, "Come and fight." "Please." Gui Yuhuan cupped his hands. At the League of Stars and Seas. A group of higher-ups stood at the top of the mountain and observed the arena with their spiritual senses. Gui Yuhuan seems to be stronger than before. It's said that he comprehended the third level of the domineering blade profound meaning not long ago. The younger generation will surpass us in time. If that's the case, the Sect of all time's disciples have no hope. Once Gui Yuhuan uses the domineering blade arts, that guy won't be able to last more than 20 rounds. The higher-ups of the League of Stars and Seas discussed. To them, Gui Yuhuan was one of the hopes of the heaven-crossing realm. He should be able to get a good result in the universe's sacred war 10 years later. Of course. This battle also attracted many older generation experts. Although they didn't go to the scene, they were watching from afar. In the arena. "Make your move," Gui Yuhuan said. Yi Xingchen shook his head and said, "You should make the first move. I'm afraid that if I make the first move, you won't even have a chance to fight back." This sentence was very arrogant and instantly angered the fans. "All right." Gui Yuhuan shook his head and said, "I'll accept your offer." Clang! The Duan blade was unsheathed. Domineering blade arts, Thunderbolt. Gui Yuhuan seemed to have realized that the opponent was extraordinary and used his best blade technique. Shwa! Yi Xingchen moved his body and dodged the sharp blade light. Shwa! Shwa! At this moment, Gui Yuhuan attacked with his blade. The sky was filled with blade light accompanied by extreme special effects. As expected. Vice Leader Peng said in surprise, "This kid has comprehended the third level of the domineering blade profound meaning. As long as the domineering blade arts is used, it will form a continuous attack. Once the Sect of all time's disciples are entangled, they will lose without a doubt." Great Elder said. "It's already entangled. That guy actually didn't retreat." In the arena, Yi Xingchen faced the densely packed blade light and only moved his body. It was as if he was allowing the opponent to use the remaining moves of the domineering blade arts. "It's over." Vice Leader Peng shook his head and said. Boom! At this moment, an explosive sound rang out, and the saber light that filled the sky dispersed. Gui Yuhuan staggered back, and then fell down from the stage. That's right. It's over. When Gui Yuhuan fell down, the surroundings of the ring were silent. This, Vice Leader Peng, Great Elder, and the others were stunned. The fans who wanted to cheer for Gui Yuhuan had their hands by their mouths. Their expressions were completely frozen. We haven't even started to cheer and our idol lost? No. This isn't reality. This must be a dream. Chapter 1792. Vice Leader Peng was right. The sparring match had come to an end. However, Yi Xingqian was not the one who lost. It was Gue Yuhuan. The League of Stars and Seas executives did not expect this result. Unbelievable. How did he do it? The First Elder and the others were shocked. They could accept Gue Yuhuan's loss. But what they could not accept was that the opponent had easily broken through the domineering sword technique and formed an impenetrable sword light and then defeated him with one punch. Trash. Yi Xingqian, who was standing in the arena, said lightly. Although these two words were unpleasant to hear, it was undeniable that Knight Emperor was qualified to say that because he defeated Gue Yuhuan at his strongest point of attack and slapped the faces of the League of Stars and Seas executives with his actions. Especially, he slapped the faces of the rational fans. Look. Your idol was defeated by me with one move. Are you done for? If these fans had been calmer at that time, Yi Xingqian might not have killed him so decisively. They might have gone easy on him so that he would not have been defeated so badly. There was no other way. The fans had to pay for their idol's actions. You are very strong. I admit defeat. Gue Yuhuan endured the pain from his chest and cupped his hands. Yi Xingqian did not say anything. He turned around and walked down the arena. He was very disappointed. He was disappointed that he was too strong and could not find an opponent. Forget it. When he went back, he would find junior brother He to spar more. At least if the other party did not use his full strength, he could still be on par with him. Let's go home. Jun Changshao got up. He was not surprised that Yi Xingqian defeated Gue Yuhuan. After all, he was one of the strongest attackers in the sect of all times. It was normal for him to win against a martial artist at the peak of the truth-seeking realm. What? That day, Gu Tianqing returned from visiting relatives with his wife. After learning about the battle, he said in surprise, he defeated Gue Yuhuan with one move? It's true. Vice Leader Peng said helplessly. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would have been as surprised as the leader. Father. Gu Zhaoxi said, it's very normal. There's no need to make a fuss about it. He didn't deny that Gue Yuhuan was outstanding, but at the same time, he couldn't deny that his sect's disciples were terrifying. If he had to describe them, they would be a group of monsters. Gue Yuhuan is one of the top geniuses in my crossing heaven realm, but he was actually killed by that brat's disciple. This is simply. Gu Tianqing found it hard to accept, unbelievable. After saying that, he hurried to Jun Changshao's residence. Goshen looked at his shocked face, scratched his head and said, isn't it just defeating a martial artist of the same realm? Brat! Gu Tianqing said solemnly, do you know what it means for your disciple to insta-kill Gue Yuhuan? What does that mean? Jun Changshao asked. Gu Tianqing said, with Gue Yuhuan's current strength, if placed in the previous universe sacred war, he might not be able to enter the top 500, but he would at least be able to enter the top 600. Since your disciple could kill him in an instant, he might be able to enter the top 200. No way. Yi Xingqian, who was at the peak of the truth-seeking realm, was already very strong. But in the end, he was only able to enter the top 200. Didn't that mean that there were still 199 participants like him? Uncle. Jun Changshao said in surprise, the strength of the top 200 participants is terrifying? Yes. Gu Tianqing sat down and said solemnly, let me put it this way. Those who can participate in the universal holy war are the top geniuses of their respective dimensions. Those who can make it into the top 200 can be considered the pride of their galaxy. Jun Changshao was silent. The pride of a galaxy, this was indeed a bit awesome. Gu Tianqing said, all the participants who enter the top 10 are existences that everyone looks up to. Uncle. Jun Changshao said, have you participated in it before? No. Gu Tianqing shook his head and said, the universe sacred war was held 10,000 years ago. It has only been held 10 times so far. Oh. Jun Changshao responded. Yi Xingqian, who was standing next to him, frowned. He wouldn't forget the scene that Xia Lingyao saw when she entered a certain illusion, especially when Xiao Ziji came to find him in the illusion and said, "The 12th Universe Sacred War is about to begin. Are you interested in fighting with Senior Brother until the world turns upside down?" "Senior Gu?" he asked, "how often is the Universe Sacred War held?" 1,000 years. Yi Xingchen fell silent. If the illusion corresponded to the future, it was only the 11th Universe Sacred War now. Xiao Ziji asked him to participate in the 12th, so the time should be 1,000 years later. Impossible. I'm not the Night King. She's not the Night Queen. I won't leave the sect, and I won't have children. Stars? Jun Changshao said, "What are you thinking about?" Yi Xingchen stopped thinking and said, "Nothing." "That's not right." Jun Changshao said suspiciously, "You had a complicated look in your eyes just now. Is there something on your mind? Come." After setting up the wine and dishes, he said, "Please tell me what's on your mind. This disciple is going to cultivate." Yi Xingchen definitely wouldn't say that he saw the future and saw him leaving the sect. It's a bit strange. Watching him leave, Jun Changshao held his chin and said, "Jun Patriarch." Gu Tianqing said, "Since your disciple is so strong, why don't you participate in the Universe Sacred War? This junior has this plan, but..." Jun Changshao said bitterly, "I don't know where to register." "Let's go." Gu Xiaoxi said, "I'll take you to Do Tian City. There's a registration point there." "That's not right. Why is Uncle Gu so enthusiastic about me?" Jun Changshao was a bit flustered. On the way, Gu Tianqing said, "Jun Patriarch, I have a presumptuous request, but I don't know if I should say it." "Don't say it." Jun Changshao said bluntly. Under normal circumstances, a presumptuous request was never a good thing. "It's like this." Gu Tianqing said, "I heard from Gua that you don't seem to be planning to return to the upper realm. The upper realm is just a place to stay. Since I've come out, this junior doesn't plan to go back." Jun Changshao said. Gu Tianqing said, "The Universe Sacred War has a rule. Participants must report their galaxy and plane." Jun Changshao was speechless. "Can't you just report your sect and name to participate in this kind of competition? Why do you have to report your address? Since you don't plan to return to the upper realm, why don't you fill me in as Du Tian?" Jun Changshao understood. No wonder he was suddenly so enthusiastic. It turned out that he was waiting for him here. "Okay." Go Xing agreed. In fact, it didn't matter what plane he filled in. The important thing was that his disciple could win the championship and receive generous rewards. Of course. Jun Changshao also had his own plans. If he had the chance to participate in the 12th Universe Sacred War in the future, he would definitely let his disciple fight in the name of the eternal world. Because by that time, it should have developed and could stand proudly in the upper realm of the universe. Huh. Gu Tianqing laughed and said, "As expected of my son's brother. You give your Uncle Gu a lot of face." Du Tian City. Du Tian City capital. Jun Changshao wasn't in the mood to look at the spectacular buildings. He followed Gu Tianqing straight to the registration point of the Universe Sacred War. Because there were still 10 years to the start of the competition, there weren't many forces and individuals signing up. Alliance Master Gu. The person in charge walked out and smiled. "Why are you here?" "I brought an acquaintance to sign up." "Oh?" The person in charge looked at Jun Changshao and said, "For Alliance Master Gu to bring him here personally, this young friend must be extraordinary." "Don't talk nonsense." Gu Xiaoxi said, "Hurry up and go through the formalities." Okay. The person in charge sat down and took out an object similar to a compass. He placed his hands on it and a stream of light gradually appeared. Name of the participant, place of origin and sect. Lu Qianxian, Li Qingyang, Su Xiaoma, Xiao Ziji, Yi Xingchen, He Wudi, Li Fei, Tian Qi, Long Xiang, Yang Yuhua, Song Xianzhou, Long Xiang, Li Tian, Sun Mucheng. Jun Changshao couldn't close his mouth once he opened his mouth. Gu Tianqing and the person in charge gradually widened their eyes. Chapter 1793. Yi Xingchen had defeated one of the top geniuses of the Crossing Heaven realm. Gu Tianqing felt that he was qualified to participate in the Universe Sacred War, so he took the initiative to bring Jun Changshao to register. The address of the Crossing Heaven realm was also to give him face. Gu Tianqing and his wife lived in seclusion in the mountain and sea realm, but they were still from the Crossing Heaven realm, and were even comparable to the realm lord. If there were any benefits, they would definitely want to give it to their own realm. However, what he didn't expect was, when they arrived at the registration area, Jun Changshao opened his mouth and named a few dozen disciples. Oh. Right. And Lin Yi Feng, Qin Lin. Go Xing added at the end. It was hard to satisfy the core and inner disciples, and even the second-generation disciples were included. As expected, this was going to cause trouble. The person in charge was dumbfounded. He had seen one person registering a few people before, but this was the first time he had seen one person registering dozens of people. Brat! Gu Tianqing pulled a long face and said, "You are protecting so many people to participate in the Universe Sacred War, are you treating it as a game?" Uncle. Jun Changshao said seriously, "I didn't want to sign up for so many either, but there are too many geniuses in the sect. They've all worked hard to cultivate, and since there's a grand competition, they should at least be given a chance to show off their talents." Bah! Gu Tianqing couldn't care less about the demeanor of a strong warrior, and spat out, "Don't be afraid of biting your tongue." Alliance leader Gu. The person in charge said awkwardly, "Do you really want to register so many people?" Report. Gu Tianqing said, "Since this brat wants the disciples to be tortured, then let's do as he wishes." He was a little angry. All right. The person in charge placed both hands on the screen of the compass, entered all the names he had recorded, and then asked, "Sect, place of origin." "Sect of all times, Crossing Heaven realm." The person in charge muttered in his heart, "I have lived here for so many years, why have I never heard of this sect?" Forget it. Since Alliance leader Gu personally brought them here, he had to give them face. To be honest, if Gu Tianqing hadn't brought Jun Changshao here and asked him to register himself and register dozens of disciples all at once, it was very likely that he would be suspected of having a mental problem, or even deliberately coming here to cause trouble. Wang! In a magnificent hall, a light screen that looked like a projection was constantly trembling. Names appeared one after another, and they were all followed by the words Eternal Sect and Crossing Heaven Realm. What is this situation? The red-haired old man held a bowl of rice and said as he ate, "Why are there suddenly so many applicants in the Crossing Heaven Realm? And they are all from the same sect. Sect of all times? This names of the name. Of the ofs, she Heaven Realm, she was to hers ss of s sects Heaven Sect realms, to ask him to find out what's to Heaven Sect. To ask him. Obviously, he should be the person in charge of the Universe Sacred War. He was unhappy with the sudden appearance of a sect that had so many warriors registering, and even thought that it was a blasphemy against the sacred competition. "I found out." After a while, the old man said, "The participants of this so-called sect of all times are recommended by the Crossing Heaven Realms League of Stars and Seas." Gu Tianqing. The old man frowned. Didn't this guy live in seclusion with his wife? The woman flicked her hair. The old man said, "I heard that he destroyed many battleships of the Star Spirit world a few years ago. Now that he has appeared in public, isn't he afraid of revenge? With Gu Tianqing's strength and ability, the Star Spirit world probably won't dare to openly take revenge, right?" The old man said. "They won't dare to openly, so they will do it secretly." The woman said in disdain, "This is the Star Spirit world's way of doing things. Inform them." The old man was silent for a while before saying, "A sect is not allowed to register so many participants again. The universe sacred war was very sacred, and those who were qualified to participate were all top geniuses of their respective planes. If anyone were to register, it would be no different from playing house. As for the sect of all times, for Gu Tianqing's sake, they would let it be. In any case, during the qualifiers, those participants were not strong enough and would definitely be eliminated. Crossing Heaven Realm, League of Stars and Seas. After Gu Tianqing returned, he called Jun Changshao over and said, "In 5 years, the qualifiers of the universe sacred war will begin. At that time, the participants must participate in the registration plane. If they don't reach the specified time, they will be considered to have forfeited." Jun Changshao was speechless. "Uncle, you mean I have to wait here for 5 years? No need." Gu Tianqing said, "During this time, you can bring your disciples to train, but you must return before the qualifiers begin." "Okay." Jun Changshao said confidently, "No problem." "But," he said weakly, "if the geniuses of your Crossing Heaven realm are similar in strength to the geniuses who play with knives, I think there is no need to fight." "Why?" "They definitely can't beat the disciples of the sect of all times." Gu Tianqing reached out and grabbed his face, roaring, "Is your face thicker than others? Ouch! Ouch! Get lost!" Jun Changshao covered his face and ran away. Chapter 1794. The Universe Sacred War qualifiers were 5 years later. During this period, Jun Changshao could do a lot of things, so he was not in a hurry at all. He even stayed in the League of Stars and Seas for the time being. Of course, he was not playing around. Instead, he was actively discussing management experiences with Vice Leader Peng. There is bound to be something to learn from. For the strongest force in the Crossing Heaven world, the leader had brought his wife out to live in seclusion, and the vice leader managed it well. He had to learn a little and then pass it on to Yuan Gongzi. In the past, with the restriction of the soul bomb, Jun Changshao even went out to purchase herbs personally. Although the main mission was still there, without the threat of the bomb, Goshing started to become lazy. He wanted to be a hands-off manager. In fact, now that it had developed to this point and had so many higher-ups, it could basically operate on its own. What he could do now was to make the sect stronger and obtain more martial arts resources. This is a problem. Jun Changshao sat in the courtyard and said, "I have to consider it at all times." "Brother." Gu Zhaoxi walked over and said, "When are we leaving?" He was a little anxious. Because, ever since he came to the Crossing Heaven world, his mother often called Qingqiu Lin over to chat. Their relationship was getting better day by day. If he did not take her away, they might really get married in the future. In a few days. Jun Changshao also had plans to leave. After all, he still had to bring his disciples to explore the universe. Maybe he would encounter an opportunity in 5 years and break through to the half-step Tianji realm. "Right." He said, "I heard from Uncle Gu that he signed you up for the Universe Sacred War long ago." "Yes." Gu Zhaoxi said. "In that case, you will have to participate in the qualifiers with the disciples in 5 years. My father is the leader of the League of Stars and Seas. He has absolute power in the Crossing Heaven world, so as a son, I don't have to participate in the qualifiers. I can directly enter the main competition." Jun Changshao was silent. After a while, he secretly turned his head and looked at you outside the screen. He howled, "Too damn enviable." A few days later, Jun Changshao stood outside the League of Stars and Seas. He cupped his hands and said, "Uncle Gu, thank you for taking care of me during this time. This junior will take his leave first." "Humph," Gu Tianqing snorted and said, "You must take good care of my son on the way. Zhaoxi is my brother, and also an elder of the sect of all times. This junior will naturally use his life to protect him," Jun Changshao said seriously. This sentence was not only said to Gu Tianqing, but also to himself. "Let's go." Gu Tianqing turned around. Actually, at first, he was not willing to let Gu Zhaoxi follow Jun Changshao. However, after thinking about it, he felt that there might be a special way to nurture an outstanding disciple like Yi Xingqian. Uncle. Goodbye. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and turned to descend the mountain. Eternal quietly stopped in the open space. Shengwan Xinyao and the others were already in place, testing various flight data in the cockpit. Brother. Jun Changshao said, it's time to set off. Gu Xiaoxi walked toward the opened cabin. Just as he was about to enter, he stopped, then turned around and knelt down, kowtowing to the gate of the League of Stars and Seas. Father, Mother, your son will be back. My son, Mother Gu covered her face and cried. Gu Tianqing's back was still facing the foot of the mountain. It was difficult to see the expression on his face, but his hands were trembling slightly. After a while, he said in a loud voice, if you don't break through the peak of the truth-seeking realm on the day you return, you don't deserve to be my son, Gu Tianqing. Peak of the truth-seeking realm? Father. Gua shouted, your request is too low. Why don't you set a half-step Tianji? Ha ha ha. Gu Tianqing laughed loudly and said, this is my son, Gu Tianqing. Whoosh. Gu Xiaoxi stood up and walked toward Eternal. Whoosh whoosh. Under the gazes of the League of Stars and Seas, the battleship spewed out flames and flew out of the crossing heaven world, merging into the endless universe. Vice Leader. The Great Elder muttered, in 5 years, nephew can break through to the half-step Tianji? In theory, it's extremely difficult, Vice Leader Peng said. This was because the Alliance leader was here, so he spoke more tactfully. In his heart, he was thinking that even if those geniuses participating in the universe sacred war could break through to the half-step Tianji, it was impossible to do so in 5 years. Brother. After Eternal flew out of the crossing heaven world, Jun Changshao walked over and patted Gu Xiaoxi's shoulder. In the future, when you say half-step Tianji, can you add the word realm? Can you not add the word probably? Why? Let's not talk about machines. 5 years later. Jun Changshao sat in the cockpit and swirled the water in his glass. He looked at the endless space and said, I want all the galaxies to remember the Sect of all times. The universe sacred war held once every 1,000 years was a great chance for him to make a name for himself. As long as he had fame, he would be able to gain reputation. As long as he had reputation, he would be able to use hacks without fear. Also, Jun Changshao said, the main mission is for me to rule the universe. If Disciple becomes the champion of the universe sacred war and defeats the geniuses of the various galaxies and planes, will that count as completing the mission? Host is thinking too much, the system said. Jun Changshao said, the mission only said to rule the universe and didn't give a hard target. Combined with the mission points from helping Euphia restore the royal family's prestige, it means that the so-called rule the universe is not conquered with strength. The system was speechless. Of course. Jun Changshao said, I definitely won't be stupid and wait for the main competition 10 years later. During this period, I will go around the various galaxies. Maybe I will complete the main mission in advance and step into the real Tianji state. Do you think the author will give you so much time to wander around? The system said, believe it or not, the next chapter is 5 years later. Jun Changshao said, believe it. So. The system said, before the great art of spring and autumn is activated, hurry up and plan your disciples' cultivation so that they will have a reasonable reason to become stronger 5 years later and not be criticized by the readers. Look, they are actually using hacks, Tianwei Secret Realm. Phew. Yi Xingqian exhaled and looked up at the city gate tower with the words Hulao Pass engraved on it. He said with a cold gaze, I will spend these 5 years alone in the secret realm. Boom. 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 Lu Bu jumped out and roared, thief, give me back my equipment. The two instantly engaged in a fierce battle. In the end, Yi Xingqian was defeated and announced the end. Previously, he was able to defeat this SS-grade demonized heroic soul because of the cooperation of his fellow sect members. If he was alone, he would definitely be beaten up. It did not matter. Night Emperor was defeated, but he was very happy. Because this was the goal he had set for himself in these 5 years. He did not rely on others and defeated the other party personally. Boom! Boom! In an empty area in the east of the Sect of all times, Xiao Ziji carried a heavy mountain and walked forward step by step. Physique cultivator. Never to be left behind. He and Yi Xingqian were not the only ones who were busy. All the disciples who signed up for the universal sacred battle were actively cultivating for no other reason than to let the Sect of all times become famous in the universe. These people were already crazy enough under Jun Changxiao's nurturing. Now that they started to focus on cultivation, they really did not give the participants from other dimensions any chance to survive. Time passed. Gone forever. 5 years passed just like that. Chapter 1795. 5 years. A full 5 years. Eternal was still roaming the universe. During this time, Jun Changxiao had passed through many planes and experienced different cultures. His mental state had improved a little and he had also earned a lot of martial arts resources. Don't ask how he earned it, it would be profiteering. Of course. His face had also improved along with his mental state. After all, a businessman not only had to be eloquent but also had to bargain. Otherwise, how could he earn profits? Patriarch. Flying out from a certain plane, Shengguan Xinyao skillfully set the route and said, "We will arrive at the crossing heaven world in about half a month." Okay. Jun Changxiao leaned on the seat and held his face with one hand. 5 years didn't leave any traces on his exquisite face. Instead, he emitted a stronger aura of a superior, as well as the shrewdness of a businessman. It could be said that he was a contradictory combination of prestige and unscrupulousness. Whoosh Eternal cut through the void and flew towards the crossing heaven world. As for the plane that Jun Changxiao came from, a group of bruised and swollen local cultivators were lying on the ground and shouting in unison, "Seiko, you bastard, of all people, you had to provoke a demon." Seiko didn't say anything because he had already fainted from the abuse. The situation was like this. When Eternal was flying in the universe, it almost collided with another warship. The other side opened the door and cursed, even taking out a transmission token to shake people. Jun Changxiao was furious. "I was flying in a straight line. You came from the side. Do you think I'm blind? Can't you see that I'm trying to scam you? Brat!" Seiko pointed at Go Sheng's nose and said angrily, "This daddy's men are coming. If you don't pay up today, then leave your life behind." "Wait, too slow." Jun Changxiao said, "Why don't we go to your territory?" Seiko was a little stunned. He had been in this business for a long time and this was the first time he met someone who took the initiative to go to his territory. "Okay. Come if you dare." And so, he brought Jun Changxiao to his home. At first glance, it looked like he was leading a person, but in reality, he was leading a group of demons. The following plot was nothing more than local cultivators standing up for him, but in the end, they were all defeated. Not only were they injured, but they also lost their space rings. It was already good enough that Jun Changxiao wasn't trying to scam him. Yet, Jun Changxiao actually wanted to scam him. Crossing heaven world. Standing outside of the palace of the Alliance of Stars, Gu Tianqing said, "There are only 3 days to go until the meeting. Why hasn't the little thief returned yet?" Vice Alliance leader Peng whispered, "Could he have stood you up? In my opinion." The Great Elder said, "Jun Changxiao doesn't take the Universe Sacred War seriously at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let so many disciples sign up 5 years ago." "I won't." Gu Tianqing said, "I believe that guy." Although he said so, he was thinking in his heart, "Brat, if you dare to stand me up, I'll beat you up no matter where you are." Swish at this time, the sky was distorted. A majestic battleship flew past and then slowly docked on the lawn at the foot of the League of Stars and Seas. Caw caw. The cabin door opened, and Jun Changxiao walked out and shouted, "Uncle, I'm here." His voice was like a bell, resounding throughout the Crossing Heaven realm. The geniuses who were on their way to crossing Sky City to participate in the preliminaries all stopped and frowned. Pressure. They suddenly became unprecedentedly strong. I have a bad feeling about this qualifier, a contestant said with a serious expression. Don't worry, young master. The old servant who accompanied him smiled. There are 50 spots for this qualifier. As long as you get one spot, you can go to the Star System Advancement competition. That's true. The young contestant felt relieved. He then shook his head and said self-deprecatingly, maybe I've been cultivating too hard and taking the qualifier too seriously. I've become worried. League of Stars and Seas, Main Hall. Gu Tianxing carefully observed Jun Changshao and found that he seemed to have become more elegant and cunning in the past 5 years. Uncle. Jun Changshao said, this time, I happened to come across a world where herbs are the main ingredient. I brought back many herbs of different quality. Please accept them. All kinds of treasures and potted plants appeared out of thin air. Gu Tianxing was very knowledgeable in this area and was immediately interested. However, he soon asked with a suspicious look, did you steal them? Jun Changshao was speechless. I spent a lot of money to buy them. There are receipts and invoices. Nephew, you're too kind. Gu Tianxing waved his hand and kept all the herbs. At first, he called him a dog thief. Now, he called him nephew. This change in attitude was too real. Oh right. Gu Tianxing said, where's my son? He's training. He'll be back tomorrow, Jun Changshao said. Oh. Gu Tianxing asked again, what about your disciples? They're training too. Gu Tianxing was speechless. The qualifier is around the corner. Why don't you let them come back quickly? Do you take the Universe Holy War seriously? Uncle. Jun Changshao said, I'm very serious. Indeed. In the past 5 years, he had been emphasizing for his disciples to cultivate diligently. He was very serious and even treated it as a top priority. No wonder when he shouted, the contestants would feel a lot of pressure. After all, the sloppy disciples of the sect of all times were already very scary. If they were treated seriously, there was no hope at all. 5 years passed quickly. Naturally, 3 days passed even faster. On this day, in the eternal world, the weather turned from sunny to cloudy. Shwa! Jun Changshao strode out of the main hall. He put on the patriarch's special cloak and tidied his collar. He said loudly, gather. Boom! Outside the mountain, Xiao Ziji put down Big Mountain and quickly returned to the sect. Under the light of the morning sun, his exposed muscles appeared to be dazzling and holy. It could be seen that after 5 years of body tempering, although there was no substantial improvement in his realm, his defense had increased a lot. Little do, because he's afraid of pain, he increased his defense. It was early in the morning. A meter of sunlight shone through the window. Su Xiaoma got up and walked to the wardrobe to take out the brand new Sect of All Times uniform. After passing it around, he looked back at Xia Shuiyun, who was still sleeping, and said to himself, I'll be back soon. Creak. He opened and closed the door gently. However, when he walked out of the small courtyard he built 5 years ago, a lazy voice came from behind. You're not waiting for me. Xia Shuiyun was already awake. She leaned against the window, her waterfall-like hair cascading down, looking very feminine. I'm afraid I'll disturb your rest. Creak. The door opened. Xia Shuiyun had already changed into her uniform and tied up her messy black hair. She said, Don't forget, I'm your fiancé and also a disciple of the Sect of All Times. Su Xiaoma was silent for a while, then reached out his hand and smiled. Let's go. Xia Shuiyun rolled her eyes at him, but still reached out her hand. Then, they left the home they had built together for 5 years and officially returned to the Sect of All Times. A winner in life. Su Xiaoma. Chapter 1796. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the heavenly might's secret realm, Yixingchen half squatted on the ground, sweat dripping down his chin. Kid, in the distance, the demonized Lu Bu sat cross-legged on the ground, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Return my equipment. Judging from the potholes on the Hulao Pass battlefield, the two of them should have fought for a long time and seemed to be exhausted. TSK, Yixingchen stood up, put away the sky piercer and set, and disappeared on the spot. Before leaving, he did not forget to say, "Next time, you will definitely lose." 5 years. He had challenged the demonized Lu Bu for 5 years. From being abused at the beginning, to barely holding on, to a narrow defeat, to now holding on until the end, Yixingchen was improving almost every moment. However, it was the same as Xiao Ziji's situation. He had been stuck at the peak of the truth-seeking realm and had not broken through. There was no other way. To reach the half-step heavenly secrets realm, one needed too many opportunities. It was not something that could be improved by hard work. This guy, after watching Yixingchen leave, the demonized Lu Bu lay on the ground dejectedly and said unwillingly, "He's getting stronger and stronger each time. I can't do anything to him at all." It was mainly because he did not have any equipment and his equipment was worn by the other party. Otherwise, he would still be able to defeat the other party after 5 years. Whoosh! Outside the secret realm, Yixingchen was teleported out. He had planned to take a cold shower, but when he heard the patriarch's call, he immediately dismissed the idea and went to the main hall. On the martial arts field, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others had already arrived. All of them stood with their heads held high and chests puffed out. In the past 5 years, many disciples had not obtained any great opportunities and were still stuck at the peak of the truth-seeking realm. However, their aura and temperament had changed drastically. Counting their ages, most of them were almost 50 years old. However, because the lifespan of a high-level martial arts world was easily thousands of years old, they were still very young and full of vitality. Whoosh! Whoosh! After a while, Su Xiaoma flew over holding Xia Shuiyan's hand. Then, he returned to the spot that was specially reserved and smiled at his fellow disciples. They had known each other for a long time and did not know how to say polite words. It was all in mutual trust. Who? A gust of cold wind blew. Lu Qianxian, whose clothes were whiter than snow, landed in front of her fellow disciples. Just like what Dodo had said in the previous chapter, time did not leave any traces on Jun Changxiao's face because his face was too thick. However, this eldest disciple who was as cold as snow was the one who had not changed at all. Perhaps, it was because his face was too cold. Swish! Swish! A short while later, Long Xiang, Li Tiantian, and the other disciples arrived. There were 40 to 50 of them, so I won't list their names one by one to avoid being criticized again. All in all, those who participated in the universe's sacred war would definitely have a name and surname. Whether or not they could be shown on camera would depend on the situation. For example, Jing Ji and Mao Xiaodao might be pulled in to make up their names. Is everyone here? Jun Changxiao asked. Everyone's here. Set off. Jun Changxiao flicked his sleeves, put on his sunglasses, and strode out of the mountain gate. Lu Qianxian, Li Qingyang, and the other disciples followed closely behind. Because there were more people and their auras were stronger, the scene was quite shocking. Strange. Elder Wei was puzzled. Can't you just spread the news? Why do you have to bring the disciples out of the sect? Du Tian City. Because it was the day of the preliminaries, the streets were filled with people. In the central area of the city, the previous registration location had been temporarily set up with a battle stage and a spectator stand. There were participants going through the procedures to enter. Alliance Master Gu. The person in charge of the Du Tian region, Li Renfu, was puzzled. Where are the people from the sect of all times? Don't worry. Gu Tianqing, who was sitting on the highest level spectator stand, said, on the way. Oh. Li Renfu was silent for a while, then said, Alliance Master Gu, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it. Speak, Gu Tianqing said. Li Renfu said, the Universe Sacred War is the highest level competition for geniuses in the entire upper universe. June Patriarch, who you brought here earlier, allowed so many disciples to participate. This is quite amusing. Whether it's child's play or not, we'll only know after we fight. Gu Tianqing also thought that Jun Changshao was too careless, but since they had already registered and were about to start, he could only choose to believe it. Moreover, in the 5 years that his son had left, although he had not broken through to the half-step Heavenly Secrets realm, he had already entered the peak of the truth-seeking realm. This made him deeply believe that Jun Changxiao's disciples would not be too bad. Even if all of them did not advance, at least a few outstanding geniuses would appear. Speaking of Gu Xiaoxi, this guy's realm and height could be said to have advanced by leaps and bounds. Not long after he was born, Gu Tianqing tempered his body with all kinds of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Then, he focused on cultivating in the sect of all times for 5 years. It was normal for him to break through to this level. Regretfully, he did not fulfill his promise to leave the Du Tian realm. This could not be blamed on him. After all, he had been stuck as a core disciple for 5 years. If he had to blame someone, then it was Go Sheng and the system. One did not cheat, and the other did not give anything good. Young Master Chu is here. At this moment, a shout sounded outside the venue, attracting the attention of all the warriors. Swoosh! In their field of vision, 6 burly warriors carrying a luxurious palanquin flew over from midair and stopped steadily at the entrance. Alliance Leader Gu. Li Renfu hurriedly said, the number 1 genius of the Du Tian realm is here. I have to go and receive him. Go ahead. Gu Tianqing nodded and looked at the man in brocade who walked out from the crowd. He thought to himself, this little guy is stronger than 100 years ago. I wonder if the disciple of the sect of all times called Yixingchen can defeat him. Chu Wangya, the number 1 genius of the Du Tian realm. No matter what sword or saber, they were all nothing in front of him. Especially 100 years ago, during the genius competition held by the Du Tian realm, he fought his way to the finals. No matter what level of opponent he encountered, he defeated them in one move. Hence, he was also known as Chu One Move. Unlike a popular genius like Gui Yuhuan, Chu Wangya had both looks and strength. He could be said to be a genuine acting genius, especially since he lived in seclusion. Hence, there were only legends about him in the martial arts world, but it was rare for people to see him. No suspense. Young Master Chu will definitely be first. The other contestants can only fight for second place. It's hard to say. 5 years ago, that stink-faced young man could defeat Gui Yuhuan in one move. I'm afraid he will bring trouble to young Master Chu. TSK, young Master Chu participated in the genius competition and won the championship in one move. How can that guy be compared to him? After Chu Wangya entered the venue, the warriors began to talk about him. Their words were full of envy and admiration. If a person was outstanding, they might be envied by others. If a person was outstanding to the extreme, they would only be in awe and even feel ashamed of their inferiority. Thump, thump, thump. Thump, thump, thump. Suddenly, the sound of verbs came from the main street, startling the passers-by and causing them to look back with a stunned expression. Because the camera was placed on the ground, the lens was facing the other end of the street. Accompanied by the background music of superstars in troubled times, heads appeared one after another, followed by strong and unyielding figures. Finally, they stepped in front of the camera. Thud! Thud! Lu Qianxian, Li Qingyang, Su Xiaoma, Xiao Ziji, Yi Xingchen, He Wudi, and the other disciples were lined up at the entrance. Animators must remember to use slow motion here. From the moment the disciples of the sect of all times appeared to the moment they stopped, they must give the passers-by and warriors close-up shots. They must also maintain their frozen and shocked expressions. Otherwise, the effect will not be achieved. Swoosh! Jun Changshao, who was walking in the Doflamingo footwork to the rhythm, stopped in front of the disciples. First, he took off his sunglasses and blew out a smoke ring. Then, he spread his legs and spread his arms. With a strange smile, he said, "For today's preliminaries, the Sect of all times has booked the whole venue." Chapter 1797. Jun Changshao had arrived with his disciples. Sure enough, his entrance was as shocking and eye-catching as ever. It was as silly as ever. What a show-off! Shameless boasting. Arrogant and despotic. Everyone looked at him with disdain. It was not their fault for being ridiculed this time. It was mainly because Jun Changshao was asking for a beating. So what if he made a high-profile entrance? Why did he have to shout that the Sect of all times wanted to book the whole place? Gu Tianqing shook his head and said, "It's okay for young people to be arrogant, but it's not good to be too arrogant." He was more optimistic about Yixingchen, but it was impossible for the Sect of all times to book all 50 places. If they encountered Chu Wanji, some disciples would definitely be eliminated. Enter. At this time, Jun Changshao snapped his fingers. The participating disciples led by Lu Qianqian and Li Qingyang stepped in. On the way, Night Emperor quietly put the magically modified stereo on his shoulder back into his spatial ring. They were going to the competition area. Gou Xing went to the spectator area. Because Gu Tianqing had led them to register, their seats were next to each other. "Uncle." Jun Changshao sat down, put his hands behind his back, leaned his head forward, and put his legs on the stand in front of him. He smiled and said, "I'm not late, am I?" "Just in time," Gu Tianqing said. Jun Changshao released his spiritual sense and spread it to the young martial artists in the corner of the venue. He said, "These are the geniuses of the heaven-crossing realm?" "Yes. They're a little ordinary." Gu Tianqing pointed to Chu Wanji, who stood out among the crowd, and said, "This person is the #1 genius of the heaven-crossing realm. If your disciples encounter him, they will definitely be eliminated, even if it's Yixingchen." "Is that so?" Jun Changshao looked at him and said, "This person is indeed a little complicated, but I'm afraid he won't be a threat to Yixingchen." Gu Tianqing realized that this kid was too good at acting, so he chose to remain silent and wait for the preliminaries to begin. Jun Changshao didn't say anything. He muttered to himself, "Should I take this opportunity to advertise?" When it came to advertisements, the cultivators of Falling Star Continent felt their scalps go numb. This was because in the past, dragons and tigers contending for supremacy were simply unbearable and painful memories. Even now, great senior imperial city's city Lord Han was still immersed in the advertisements, unable to extricate himself. "Forget it." Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "Leave it to fate." Now, he didn't care about the number of disciples. He only wanted talented teenagers. Therefore, when he recruited them, he looked at their faces. What's more, there were so many teenagers from the eternal world coming to the Sect every year, so the Sect was completely self-sufficient. More and more geniuses entered the participant area. They were either standing alone or in groups of 2 or 3. All of them looked at the dozens of Sect of all times disciples gathered in the corner with peculiar gazes. If it wasn't for the fact that the Universe Holy Battle was a one-on-one competition, everyone might have suspected that these weirdly dressed disciples were here to fight in a group. "Senior apprentice brother." Li Tian said, "I'm a little excited." He had participated in competitions before, but this was the first time he participated in such a high-level competition, especially with nearly 1 million spectators sitting around him. Therefore, he was very nervous. "Treat it as if you're sparring with your fellow disciples," Li Qingyang said. Li Tian scratched his head and said, "It depends on who I'm sparring with. If it's senior apprentice brother Yi, he'll definitely explode." Sima Zhongda, Hualing, and the others agreed. If it were their fellow disciples sparring with each other, it wouldn't be a big problem. However, if it was a core disciple like Yixingchen and Xiao Ziji, it wouldn't be a sparring, but a beating. It's not a big problem. Su Xiaoma said, these contestants shouldn't be at junior apprentice brother Ye's level. You can fight without any worries. That's good. Li Tiantian breathed a sigh of relief and continued to look at the contestants in the distance. He couldn't help but look at Chu Wanji. Seeing that she was calm, he immediately straightened his chest and raised his head. He represented the sect of all times. How could he lose to others in terms of momentum before the competition started? Everyone. At this moment, the person in charge of the preliminaries, Li Rinfu, appeared in the center of the venue and said loudly, "Welcome to the 11th Universe Sacred War, the preliminaries of the Crossing Heaven domain. Next, there will be a competition for 50 spots to advance." Everyone yawned. They wanted to see the competition start immediately instead of listening to such a boring opening. All the contestants are in position. Please look at the big screen. Li Rinfu turned around. A stream of light gradually gathered in midair. On it, there were 2 names filled in. Jun Changshao said in surprise, "The preliminaries don't choose the opponents, but directly decided by the officials?" Gu Tianqing said, "That's right." From the screen, it could be seen that the competition was divided into many groups. The warriors of each group that advanced would fight against the warriors of another group, and so on until they reached the end, which was equivalent to obtaining a spot to advance. Strange. Jun Changshao found a problem. The 45 disciples that he had signed up for were all divided into different groups. If they fought round by round, they could all obtain a spot. They wouldn't meet their fellow disciples in the process and successfully avoid internal conflicts. Uncle. Jun Changshao said, "They separated all my disciples. It's obvious that they did it on purpose. Some time ago, Li Rinfu looked for me." Gu Tianqing explained, "He said that your sect of all times has registered too many disciples. In order to avoid meeting each other in the round, they had to be separated. If you want to obtain a spot, you have to fight your way out." Jun Changshao was speechless. The officials suspected that he had registered so many disciples and hoped that they would meet each other in the competition and then let some of them advance. Sigh. Go Sheng shook his head and said, "You're measuring the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure." All right. Since they were all separated, he could book the whole place. Jun Changshao was quite supportive of the officials' grouping, which seemed to prevent the sect of all times disciples from cheating. At least they didn't have to worry about internal conflicts, so all the disciples could obtain a spot. Come on, come on. Jun Changshao's eyes blazed with passion as he said, "I can't wait to see all the disciples successfully advance." Gu Tianqing shook his head and pointed to the group at the bottom left corner of the screen. Your disciple, Li Tiantian, will face Chu Wanji in the first round. Don't dream of advancing all the way. After his reminder, Jun Changshao realized that Li Tiantian's group and his first opponent was actually Chu Wanji. So he covered his face and said, "It's over." Of course, Gu Tianqing said. In his opinion, if he met Yi Xingqian, the two might have a fierce battle. It was hard to say who would win. But if he met other disciples, especially non-core disciples, he would definitely be finished. Uncle. Jun Changshao added, "When I said it's over, I meant," after a pause, he said, "Chu Wanji." Gu Tianqing reached out and pulled his face, roaring, "Will you die if you don't show off?" Chapter 1798. Because the qualifiers had been divided into groups in advance, there was no need to waste time and ink to draw lots, which saved a lot of time. However, the contestants found their names one after another. After confirming that their first opponent was not Chu Wanji, they all breathed a sigh of relief. No matter who they met, they could not meet him. Otherwise, they would be defeated in one move, not even having a chance to make it to the second round. Li Shangtian. This name is very funny. Sect of all times disciple. He's quite unlucky to meet Chui Zhao in the first round. Everyone looked at the sect of all times disciples with gloating eyes, hoping to find Li Shangtian among them. They wanted to see what kind of expression he would have. Senior brother. Li Shengtian said, my opponent seems to be very strong. It's not a big problem, Li Qingyang said. Li Shengtian was speechless. For core disciples like them, this qualifier was not a problem. However, he was a newbie, and it was his first time participating in such a grand competition. Contestants, please take your positions. At this time, Li Renfu shouted loudly. Let's go. Li Qingyang and the others shook their heads and shrugged their shoulders. They gave each other an encouraging look and walked to their respective groups. Many contestants were paying attention. When they saw Li Shengtian walking to the east, they were certain that he was the unlucky guy who met Chui Zhao in the first round. As a top genius of the Crossing Heaven world, Chuan Ge was definitely the most popular in the qualifiers. Anyone who met him would definitely be eliminated. Sigh. Gu Tianqing shook his head. Brat, your plan to book the whole place is a goner. Is that so? A smile appeared on Jun Changxiao's face. He did not refute. If he wanted others to believe him, he had to prove it with his strength. There were many small arenas in the venue. Contestants from various groups gathered nearby. They were all busy warming up, and even their blood was starting to boil. Make a name for yourself. It would start with the qualifiers. On the contrary, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others were calmer. After joining the Sect of all times, they had experienced all kinds of competitions. They were already as calm as still water, unless they met a strong opponent. How boring, Yi Xingchen said coldly. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to go through the procedures to enter the main competition, he wouldn't have participated in the preliminaries because the contestants were too trashy. The first pair of contestants in each group. Get on the stage. Schwa. Schwa. Geniuses of all shapes and sizes ascended the stage one after another. Since there were too many disciples of the Sect of all times who had signed up, it was inevitable that someone would take the lead. Who? He Wudi. He stood in the arena and thought to himself, you clearly want to keep a low profile. Why are you taking the lead? He Wudi stole a glance at Jun Changxiao on the spectator stand and saw him smiling at him. He said helplessly, I can only follow the Patriarch's orders. The first round of the Universe Holy War preliminaries begins now. Li Renfu announced. Who? Who? In the blink of an eye, the auras of the dozens of arenas erupted. The contestants first cupped their hands politely and then began the fierce battle. It had to be said that the martial artists who dared to sign up for the competition were not weak. They were all in the truth-seeking realm, and some of them were even at the upper level or even the peak level. Boom! Boom! The battle on the 12th arena was the most exciting. The two contestants both unleashed their strongest cultivation and performed all kinds of martial arts. It was an exciting battle. Of course. Most of the audience's attention was focused on the 9th arena, on He Wudi. Daring to let so many disciples participate, did the Sect of all times really have the ability or did they purposely make up the numbers? Boom! Boom! The battle began. The contestant named Do Haitao performed a fierce palm technique right from the start. He Wudi kept retreating and even looked extremely embarrassed. Everyone's mouth twitched. Do Haitao was only average among all the contestants. He was suppressed right from the start. The Sect of all times was indeed here to make fun of him. Kid! Gu Tianqing said in a deep voice, your disciple is only at this level. Uncle! Jun Changxiao said, look back. Look my ass. Gu Tianqing yelled, he's suppressed right from the start. Do you think he can fight back? Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud bang in the arena. Do Haitao staggered a few steps back. This, Gu Tianqing was stunned. He had been watching the entire fight and had clearly seen He Wudi throw out a punch in a moment of panic, accidentally breaking his opponent's move and even striking his opponent's chest. Look! Jun Changxiao said, isn't it better now? Gu Tianqing shook his head and said, he was lucky once, but can he be lucky again? That was right. He Woody was suppressed by his opponent, but he always broke his opponent's move in an incredible way at the critical moment. Gu Tianqing's expression became interesting. It was understandable that he was lucky once, but it was strange that he was lucky multiple times. Or was his opponent deliberately hiding his strength? Impossible. Gu Tianqing immediately denied. This guy should be really lucky. As a top powerhouse in the upper universe, he was very good at reading people. He would never believe that he Woody was deliberately acting. In fact, he was acting. Because it was so real, there were no flaws. Boom. After fighting for a while, he Woody pretended to be in a difficult situation and knocked Do Haitao out of the arena. Then, he sat on the ground and wiped the sweat from his forehead. This was to tell the audience that although he won, it was a fluke. Sure enough. Everyone believed it and thought that he was too lucky. Do Haitao, who was knocked out of the arena, was so angry that his face turned red. From the beginning to the end, he clearly had the upper hand, but he still lost in the end. The winner of group number 9, he Woody. The second team of each group, come on stage. From the referee's shout, it was not difficult to see that the other groups had already determined the winner. He Woody was too engrossed in acting and had unknowingly delayed a lot of time. The second team of each group went on stage one after another. For this match, Yi Xingqian was the one to fight. The proud Knight Emperor waited for the referee to announce the start of the match. He instantly approached his opponent and threw a punch. How could fast be described? Just as the referee announced the start of the match, before the final note disappeared, the match had already ended. It took no more than a second. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "Star and Invincible are simply two extremes. One attacked, one defended. Yi Xingqian and Xiao Ziji. One was wild, one was lazy. Yi Xingqian and he Woody." Including the time when he went to Zi's bed when he was drunk, Knight Emperor could be said to be made of iron. They were from the same sect of all times and could be said to be the strongest couple among the sect of all times disciples. Thud. After winning, Yi Xingqian walked down from the arena. Because his performance was too strong, the other contestants all avoided him, fear in their eyes. It's over. Someone wailed in his heart, "My opponent in the next round is him." The match continued. The disciples of the sect of all times went on stage one after another, letting the audience know that he Woody was the only weak one. The other contestants were very strong and often defeated their opponents with instant kills. For example, the Snow White Lu Qianqian and the impregnable Xiao Ziji. There's no suspense. There's simply a bunch of monsters. We can only depend on Chu Wan Ji. While everyone was discussing, Li Rinfu announced, "The last contestants of each group, come on stage. The highlight is here." Everyone locked their eyes on the 8th arena and looked at Chu Wan Ji, who represented the hope of the crossing heaven realm. Jun Changshao clasped his fingers together and smiled. As long as the heavens defeat this person, they can announce the end of the preliminaries in advance. Chapter 1799. In the first round of the competition, all the disciples of the sect of all times had successfully advanced to the next round. Gu Tianqing was a little stunned. Not only him, but the audience was also stunned. This was mainly because he Woody, who was the first to fight, was too weak. Even if he won the competition, it was just a fluke. Therefore, it created the illusion that the disciples of the sect of all times were looking for trouble. After watching the first round of the competition, many of the participants were more or less relieved. That disciple was lucky, but how could the other disciples be? As long as they took it seriously and avoided mistakes like Do Haitao, it would be easy to defeat them. In the end, when they were knocked out of the arena, the geniuses of the crossing heaven world were all dumbfounded. There was only one thing in their minds. The disciples of the sect of all times were too strong. This kind of strength was overwhelming. For example, Li Qingyang, although he was also hiding his cultivation level, it was not as exaggerated as he Woody's. He could still bring terrifying pressure to his opponents. Brat! Gu Tianqing said with a serious look, "How did you train these disciples?" It was understandable that one or two were strong. It was unbelievable that dozens of disciples were so strong. "Uncle," Jun Changshao said, "there are no shortcuts in the path of martial arts. They have achieved what they have today because of their perseverance." The system wanted to complain, but it did not know where to start. "That makes sense." Gu Tianqing nodded in agreement. He had already started to imagine that this group of young disciples of the sect of all times must have gone through a lot in their short lives. They must have put in a lot of sweat under the setting sun. Unfortunately, Gu Tianqing looked at Li Tiantian, who was in the arena, and shook his head. Hard work is admirable, but it is nothing in front of outstanding talent. Obviously. He still thought highly of Chu Wanji. Jun Changshao did not say anything. He did not want to refute Gu Tianqing's words, because the best proof was through actions. In the arena, Li Tiantian jumped up, tripped on his left foot, and fell. Many people started to grin. It hadn't even started, and he was already acting so scared. They misunderstood. Li Tiantian wasn't afraid. He was just too nervous, so he made a small mistake that shouldn't have happened. Why would he be nervous? Because this was his first time participating in such a big competition, especially when his fellow disciples had all finished and successfully advanced to the next round. The pressure on him was naturally even greater. "Relax," Li Tiantian secretly said, "don't be nervous. Junior brother." Outside the arena, Li Qingyang encouraged him telepathically, "You can do it." Yi Xingqian leaned against the corner of the wall with his arms crossed. "If you lose to him, I'll help you kill him." The expressions of Li Qingyang and the others became interesting. After interacting with him for so long, they naturally knew that Yi Xingqian was actually concerned about his junior brother, but his words were really inauspicious. "Who?" Li Tianshang took a deep breath and his nervousness gradually dissipated. He then looked at Chu Wangya and cupped his fists. "Disciple of the sect of all times, Li Tianshang. Please enlighten me." It was a simple self-introduction, but it contained a firm and unyielding character. However, in the eyes of the audience and Gu Tianqing, this performance was like a recruit who knew that he would die but could only bite the bullet and go to the battlefield. "Please." Chu Wangya's tone was gentle. Although he was known as the #1 genius of the heaven-crossing realm, there was no arrogance in him at all. He didn't even look down on Li Tianshang when he tripped. He was humble, polite, and gentle. It was no wonder that Gu Tianqing was convinced that he could win against such a genius. "Not bad." Jun Changshao gave a compliment. Since transmigrating to the other world, he had met many geniuses of all shapes and sizes. It was rare to see a genius with such a low profile and inner character. Most of them relied on their talent and identity to be arrogant. Of course, praise was one thing. Since they met in the arena, there had to be a winner. Li Tianshang also understood this, so after greeting each other, he rushed over first. Heaven-crossing palm print. Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Palm prints gathered in the air and pressed down on Chu Wangya first. Boom boom boom. The arena began to tremble slightly under the explosive bombardment, but there were no signs of collapse because the array masters had stabilized it in advance. "This guy doesn't seem weak either." Seeing the violent airwaves caused by the battle, the audience was stunned. The corner of Gu Tianqing's mouth twitched. "Uncle," Jun Changshao said, "the show has just begun." Whoosh! Li Tianshang instantly blended into the airwaves. Boom! Boom! Fierce bombardment came from the inside, causing airwaves to spread out one after another, filling more than half of the arena. Boom! After a while, there was a muffled sound that seemed to come from the collision of palms. Li Tianshang and Chu Wangya retreated from the airwaves. One retreated 7 or 8 meters, while the other retreated more than 10 meters. Young Master Chu lost. How is this possible? Everyone's eyes widened. According to the previous competitions, Chu Wanga's opponent should have been defeated at this moment. But judging from the current situation, not only did he not win, he didn't even get the upper hand. Phew! Li Tianxiang breathed a sigh of relief and said to himself, I thought he was as strong as senior brother Yi, but now it seems that he's not that strong. He heard everyone talking about Chu Wanga clearly, so he was very serious at the beginning of the battle, fearing that his opponent was too strong for him to handle. But the result? After a simple exchange of blows, he found that his opponent was just a so-so. In fact, Chu Wanga was very strong. He was already an excellent representative at the peak of the truth-seeking realm, but Li Tianxiang, who was also at the peak of the truth-seeking realm, was even better. To be exact, any peak truth-seeking realm cultivator who came out of the sect of all times was unfathomable. After all, they had experienced all kinds of trials and explored all kinds of secret realms. To put it simply, if you're talented, I'm a cheat. Of course. It wasn't about being opportunistic. In fact, whether it was a core disciple or an outer disciple, after joining the sect of all times, even with all kinds of resources, their cultivation intensity was hundreds or thousands of times higher than others. They could achieve what they had today partly because of the various martial arts facilities, but it was also inseparable from their own efforts. As for Jun Changshao, forget it. This is a real cheat. Don't hold back. Scold him all you want. In that case, Li Tianxiang shook his shoulders and head and said, why don't we end the battle quickly? Chu Wanga frowned slightly. Whoosh! At this moment, Li Tianxiang took a step forward and squatted down. His hands quickly formed a complicated seal, and a vast amount of energy quickly gathered in the air. 9 dragons splitting palm. He Wudi said. Li Qingyang was speechless. Junior brother is too reckless. Whoosh! Whoosh! As Li Tianxiang's complicated seals were formed frequently, the air waves in the arena gathered, revealing a vast aura of dragon power. The whole venue was silent. At that moment, the powerful aura that spread out shocked everyone, including Gu Tianqing. Rising Dragon Lord of Mount Lu. At this moment, Li Tianxiang's hands blasted the void. A dragon roared and rushed toward Chu Wanga with a vast pressure. This is 9 dragons splitting palm. He Wudi roared. Boom! In an instant, a deafening explosion was heard. The arena was suddenly covered in a dazzling light, forcing the spectators to raise their wrists subconsciously to block the strong light. At the same time, huge waves arose in their hearts. What kind of martial art is this? It's so terrifying. The light on the arena shone for a while before gradually fading. When everyone looked over, they saw Li Tianxiang standing in the same place. A deep and long trench appeared in front of him. The trench not only covered the area where Chu Wanga was, but also extended to the outer wall of the venue. It's over. Jun Changshao stood up with a smile on his face. Gu Tianqing didn't say anything because he was completely dumbfounded. Because Chu Wanga was sunk in the outer wall and had fainted. The number 1 genius of the crossing heaven field. Chu Wanga, nicknamed Chuizhao, was defeated by a disciple of the sect of all times in one move. Winner: Li Tianxiang. When the referee announced the result of the battle, Li Tianxiang, who was standing proudly in the arena, first looked at his senior brothers and sisters, then looked at Jun Changshao in the spectator stand and shouted, "Disciple Tianxiang did not disappoint you." Chapter 1800. Li Tianqian's roar seemed to be venting his emotions. He was telling the world that although he was born ordinary, he still shone brightly in the sky. Junior brother Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others smiled. They were proud of Li Tianqian's victory. However, they could not smile in the next second because his opponent suddenly collapsed on the ground. In the past 5 years of cultivation, the disciples of the sect of all times had been comprehending the 9 dragons splitting palm. Although they had some gains, they had only scratched the surface. Therefore, Li Tiantian had used up most of the energy in his energy center to defeat Chu Wanji. In short, the more pretentious he was just now, the more powerful he was now. Fuck. Jun Changshao sat down and clasped his hands together. He roared in his heart. He used a big move at the beginning of the match and played himself weak. What about the rest of the match? Contestant, can you still get off the stage yourself? The referee asked. Yes, Li Tiantian panted a little and stood up with difficulty. He walked down the stage step by step. Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji hurried over to support him, afraid that he would fall again. Senior brother, did I go too far? Yes. Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji said in unison. The first round of each group ended. However, the entire venue was silent as if someone had pressed the pause button. The male martial artists watching the match widened their eyes, while the female martial artists covered their mouths in disbelief as they watched Chu Wanji being carried away by the officials. The hope of the crossing heaven realm was defeated by a seemingly insignificant disciple of the sect of all times just like that. Uncle. Jun Changshao waved his hand in front of Gu Tianqing's eyes. Are you okay? Uncle Gu turned his head stiffly and said, May I ask what rank this Li Tiantian is in your sect of all times? Inner sect. What about Yi Xingchen? Core sect. Gu Tianqing was silent. Suddenly, he stood up, grabbed his collar and shook him. He roared, Do you think I'll believe that an inner disciple is stronger than a core disciple? Jun Changshao foamed at the mouth and his eyelids rolled up due to the frequency and magnitude of the shaking. Gu Tianqing felt that Li Tiantian was stronger than Yi Xingchen because the martial art he used was too terrifying. In fact, all core disciples had comprehended the 9 dragons splitting palm, but they disdained to use it in the preliminaries. The crossing heaven world's hope had been defeated, which brought a heavy blow to all the martial artists. At the same time, it also shocked the participants who had passed the first round. At this moment, they looked at the disciples of the sect of all times as if they were looking at a demon. They howled in their hearts, I can't see any hope of advancing at all. That was right. There was no hope at all. Next, Li Renfu announced the start of the second, third, and fourth rounds. The images that appeared were all of the sect of all times disciples advancing easily. He Wudi was still the same. Although he won the competition in the end, he always gave people the feeling that he was lucky. Night Emperor was still as strong as ever. Anyone who walked onto the stage was quickly defeated. Some people might be worried about whether Li Tiantian could still do it. Men. Could not be doubted. Therefore, he ate a pill to recover his spiritual energy and continued to walk onto the stage. He defeated his opponent with his unyielding fists. Logically speaking, with so much spiritual energy, the fight should be very difficult. In fact, the victories were relatively easy. This was nothing more than defeating the favorite of the preliminaries in one move. To be precise, he used the strongest participant of the crossing heaven world to show off his strength to the other participants. They were scared to death every time they went up to fight. First group, He Wudi. The second group advanced to the next round. Li Qingyang. Third group, 50th group, Li Tiantian. After an intense competition, the 50 spots for the preliminaries were all out. Jun Changshao was right. All the disciples of the sect of all times who signed up for the competition received a spot. They had really booked the whole place. Unfortunately, 5 spots were missing. Otherwise, they would all be taken down. Uncle. Goxing said, I mean what I say. Gu Tianqing did not say anything. At this moment, he was already shocked by the performance of the disciples of the sect of all times. The disciples of the sect of all times were really a bunch of monsters. Huh. Suddenly, Gu Tianqing looked up and laughed. The purpose of the universe sacred battle was for the strong to advance and the weak to be eliminated. The disciples of the sect of all times were so strong and had defeated the number 1 genius of the crossing heaven world in seconds. If they participated in the galaxy competition, They would definitely achieve extraordinary results and bring glory to our world. June Patriarch Gu Tianqing said, in the galaxy competition 3 years later, whether our crossing heaven world can achieve a better ranking will depend on the disciples of the sect of all times. Are you serious? Jun Changshao was speechless. We have to wait for another 3 years. Ding! Epic mission activated. Another mission, damn. Epic mission. Jun Changshao almost flew out of his seat. After completing the main mission in the upper world and advancing to half-step Fecta, the epic mission never appeared again. His realm remained stagnant for hundreds of chapters. Today, it finally came. Shwa! Jun Changshao quickly pulled out the system interface and clicked on the epic mission. Upper Universe Epic Mission 1. Mission details. The Universe Sacred Battle is the highest standard martial arts feast in the upper universe. Host must bring disciples to participate in the galaxy competition and obtain a ticket to the Sacred Battle. Mission requirements: Sacred Battle Ticket 0/2. Mission reward: Sacred Battle Ticket. Jun Changshao rubbed his chin and said, "Uncle, have you heard of it?" Gu Tianqing said, "In 3 years, the Tsangyan faculty will hold the galaxy competition. Only the top 10 participants will be able to obtain a ticket and participate in the Universe Sacred Battles finals as seeds. Only 10 tickets? The top 10 geniuses will be able to enter the Sacred Battles finals directly. The others will be able to enter through the revival battle." Okay. Jun Changshao said seriously, 3 years later, our sect of all times will do our best and not disappoint Uncle. The epic mission was related to one's realm. After waiting for so long, it was finally here. Not to mention the geniuses participating in the Universe Sacred Battle, even the Patriarch would participate in the Universe Deity Battle. Shwa! The scene suddenly changed from the crossing heaven world to the vast universe, and the words 3 years later appeared below. Shio, in the endless universe, Eternal flew rapidly and then merged into a plane even bigger than the crossing heaven world. This was the upper primordial world. One of the strongest planes in the Tsangyan faculty. The location of the galaxy competition of the Universe Sacred Battle. Damn! So beautiful! After coming down from Eternal, Su Xiaoma and the others looked at the various battleships flying in the sky and the mountains floating in the sky. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Calm down. Jun Changshao said. It was undeniable that the upper primordial world was stronger than the crossing heaven world. The environment could be described as heaven-defying. But after all, they had been traveling the universe for many years and had learned to be calm. Roar! Roar! Suddenly, a roar that sounded like a dragon or a tiger was heard. Jun Changshao looked up and saw several huge dragon and tiger beasts flying in the sky, carrying handsome men and beautiful women. It could be said that they were full of immortals. TSK, one of them glanced at Eternal and said indifferently, "There are still people flying ships these days?" Jun Changshao was speechless. "We are being mocked." Gu Tianqing said with a solemn expression, "These are dragon and tiger immortal beasts. It is hard to find even a few of them in the entire upper universe. For them to be used as mounts, their identities are probably not ordinary." Who? At this time, a majestic aura appeared beside him. Gu Tianqing hurriedly turned around and saw a huge dragon beast with 9 horns on its head surrounded by lightning. 9-horned thundercloud dragon. The passers-by exclaimed. "Uncle!" Jun Changshao, who was sitting on top, waved his hand and said, "Come up quickly." The corner of Gu Tianqing's mouth twitched. The 9-horned thundercloud dragon was much more precious than the dragon and tiger immortal beasts, but it always liked to live alone and had a proud personality. How could it be willing to be a human's mount? This question needed to be answered by the prison trio. Roar! After carrying Gu Tianqing and the group of disciples, the 9-horned thundercloud dragon's lightning effect was fully activated and quickly caught up with the dragon and tiger immortal beasts flying in front of them. TSK. The moment they overtook, Jun Changshao looked at the group of handsome men and beautiful women and said, "Good. Go." Chapter 1801. As the main venue of the universe Holy War Galaxy, the upper primordial realm had already gathered forces and powerhouses from various planes. They had to report to the main city, so naturally, they couldn't do without transportation. After all, it was too cheap to walk or fly. At this moment, the sky was filled with all kinds of fancy and precious birds and beasts. Some had flames under their feet, some had water ripples all over their bodies, and each was richer than the last. On the contrary, if you wanted to drive a warship, you would be too embarrassed to greet others. Jun Changshao was a typical example. When he arrived on Eternal, he was immediately looked down upon by a group of handsome men and beautiful women. Sigh. Go Sheng was helpless. He could only summon the nine-horned thundercloud dragon. Among all kinds of beasts, the most eye-catching was undoubtedly the thunder type. This was because the special effects of lightning were completely incomparable to flames and water ripples. Sizzle. 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 The nine-horned thundercloud dragon carried Go Sheng and the others through the sky. Just the electric arcs along its path were so magnificent. Great Go! The arrogance of the handsome men and beautiful women who were overtaken was instantly shattered. Their expressions were uglier than the last. The dragon tiger immortal beast was not bad. However, the nine-horned thundercloud dragon was trash. When it sensed the dragon aura that was purer than its own, fear and inferiority appeared in its eyes. It gradually lowered its head. Was this the end of the face-slapping? No. It had just begun. Roar! A thunderous roar sounded in the sky. The handsome men and beautiful women were so shocked that they all turned to look. Sizzle! 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 Another gigantic demonic beast covered in thunder and lightning flew over. Li Qingyang stood on the head of his life contract beast with his hands behind his back and shouted, "Patriarch, wait for me." This is, Gu Tianqing was surprised. A thunder caltrip beast? The thunder caltrip beast was not a particularly rare beast in the upper universe. Its level was even lower than the dragon tiger immortal beast. However, what shocked Mr. Gu was that this beast's aura seemed to have reached half-step heavenly secrets. Impossible. How can a demonic beast of this level have the strength of a half-step? In Gu Tianqing's knowledge, even for a high-grade thunder caltrip beast, reaching the peak of the truth-seeking stage was already commendable. Indeed. Throughout the ages, the strongest powerhouse of the Thunder Rhombus clan was only equivalent to the peak of the truth-seeking realm. As for the half-step heavenly secret realm, they had never reached that level. Many races had bottlenecks. It wasn't that they didn't work hard enough, but due to the limitations of their species and bloodline, it was destined that they wouldn't be able to reach a higher level. Today, a thunder caltrip beast flew through the air, possessing an aura no weaker than a half-step heavenly fate human. This greatly shocked Gu Tianqing and all the experts from the other planes. The reason why Li Qingyang's contracted beast was so strong was because the two of them had signed a life contract, sharing the same realm and strength. Gu Tianqing did not know that the second disciple of the sect of all times was a genuine half-step fecta stage expert. He also did not know that the two of them had signed a life contract. Otherwise, he would not have been so surprised. Hurry up. Jun Changshao, who was flying in front, said. The expressions on the handsome men and beautiful women's faces were interesting again. Obviously, they had learned from the man that Jun Changshao was the patriarch. He was riding an extremely rare dragon beast, and his disciple was riding a mount stronger than the dragon tiger immortal beast. This was simply a woo roar. Suddenly, another roar of a demonic beast resounded. The handsome men and beautiful women turned around stiffly. Several beasts with auras no weaker than the peak of the truth-seeking realm appeared in their vision. There were phoenixes that looked like ice sculptures, mighty beasts that gathered whirlwinds under their feet, huge beasts that looked like huskies, crayfish, crabs, whoosh. Whoosh. They flew over quickly, surrounding the dragon tiger immortal beast and maintaining the same speed. Su Xiaoma, Xiao Ziji, and the others, who were standing on their own life contract beasts, said in unison, Patriarch, wait for your disciple. The handsome men and beautiful women were instantly scared to tears. These martial artists riding the arrogant mounts turned out to be the disciples of the person who looked down on them just now. Jun Changshao had just arrived and was mocked for driving a lousy car. At his command, the core disciples all surrounded him in a limited edition sports car. Are you afraid? Whoosh! Whoosh! The nine-horned thundercloud dragon flew in the sky with lightning special effects. Jun Changshao stood between the two horns and proudly crossed his arms. The wind blew away his hair, revealing a face that looked down on the world. The disciples rode on their life-bonded beasts and followed closely behind. They were arranged in the shape of a human. One of them was the dragon tiger immortal beast. The handsome men and beautiful women sitting on it hugged each other and shivered. Tears were rolling in their eyes. Little guy. Still showing off. Who is that? The one sitting on the thundercloud seems to be the leader of the League of Stars and Seas in the heaven-crossing realm, right? No wonder he's so arrogant. Jun Changshao was riding the coolest nine-horned thundercloud dragon, and there were all kinds of special effects beasts behind him. He instantly became the center of attention. Sigh. Gu Tianqing shook his head. Although he wasn't used to such a high-profile way, to be honest, he was quite proud of himself. Kid. If your disciples can get good results in the main competition, I'll be even more pleased. Please rest assured. Jun Changshao said seriously, they will be the most handsome in the main competition. After he said that, Li Qingyang and the others behind him were looking at him with burning eyes. They longed for more intense battles and stronger opponents. If they didn't satisfy them in the preliminaries, they should be able to fulfill their wish in the main competition. Whoosh! Suddenly, a sword light flew from afar, sometimes merging into the sky and sometimes drifting in the air. Zhou Hong turned around. It was a graceful woman with long hair fluttering in the wind. She was wearing smart clothes that outlined her perfect figure. The flying sword under her feet exuded an extraordinary aura. If Jun Changshao's nine-horned thundercloud dragon was a limited edition sports car, then this sword was a limited edition sports car. It was as fast as lightning in the sky, and its speed wasn't inferior at all. Whoosh! The flying sword accelerated and took a detour to overtake. The moment it rushed over, the woman turned her head and glanced at the nine-horned thundercloud dragon before looking at Zhou Hong. She blinked her eyes playfully. The process happened very quickly. By the time Zhou Hong's gaze caught up, the flying sword had already overtaken him. As for the other party's actions, they were imprinted in his mind like a painting. TSK. Jun Changshao looked at the sword light flying further and further away and said, "What a wild girl." "This woman's name is Jian Xiaohong," Gu Tianqing said. Jun Changshao said, "What a simple name. Although the name is ordinary, the surname is very sacred," Gu Tianqing said. "Oh?" Jun Changshao said, "I'd like to hear the details." Tens of thousands of years ago, a warrior named Jian Guishu appeared in the Ash Cloud lineage. He created his own Guishu sword technique and swept through the top sword cultivators of various major planes without a single defeat. He was respected by the world as the Guishu sword sage. As Gu Tianqing spoke, Zhou Hong listened carefully. This was because he was interested in anything related to the sword Dao. After that, Gu Tianqing said, Jian Guishu couldn't find an opponent. He stood in the Ashcloud lineage universe and slashed through the void with his sword. Since then, he sealed his sword and went into seclusion, no longer interfering in the affairs of the martial world. Is he that strong? Jun Changshao was stunned. In the lower realm, he had also killed the Star Spirit World warriors. He had once slashed through the void with his sword, but that was in a low-level environment. If it was in the upper realm, he would definitely not be able to do it. This Jian Xiaohong is Jian Guishu's granddaughter. As for that flying sword, it's the Guishu sword. It's said to be ranked first in the Ashcloud lineage's sword chart, Gu Tianqing said. No wonder it flew so fast. Besides, Gu Tianqing added, this woman is one of the favorites to win this year's interstellar tournament. So she's also a participant. Jun Changshao looked at Zhou Hong and asked, how do you feel? Very strong. Chapter 1802. How do you feel? Very strong. The moment Jian Xiaohong overtook him, Zhou Hong felt an extremely strong sword principle aura, so he was eager to fight with her. I'm not asking about your strength. Then what is it? It's a feeling. Very strong. Jun Changshao leaned on the dragon horn and said speechlessly, is this guy pretending to be confused? Jian Xiaohong blinked at Zhou Hong. He naturally caught it, so he asked how he felt. This feeling was not about his cultivation, but... was he electrocuted? Was there any resonance? Sigh. The system was speechless. A person who has always been avoiding his own feelings is especially concerned about his disciples' feelings. Was Zhou Hong deliberately pretending to be confused? No. He really did not know. As for the scene of Jian Xiaohong blinking, it was not that spring had come. He simply felt that she was a sword principle expert and had to be respected. A sword cultivator. He only had eyes for the sword. Therefore, after joining the sect of all times, Zhou Hong had been cultivating sword principle alone. He did not speak to his fellow disciples year after year. He was no different from a blockhead. In other words, in the entire sect, only Li Qingyang and Su Xiaoma were normal. One dared to kiss his fiancée in front of everyone, while the other lived together in the eternal world for 5 years. As for the other male disciples, they were almost the same as Go Sheng. The most outstanding one was none other than Yi Xingchen. Kid. Gu Tianqing said in a serious tone, if your disciple wants to win the championship, he has to defeat this favorite. Is there a problem? Jun Changshao looked at Zhou Hong. Zhou Hong thought for a moment and said, I have to fight to be sure. He did not think that the woman's sword qi was the strongest at the moment, so he naturally would not make a conclusion about the unknown. Swoosh! Swoosh! At this moment, one after another, warriors controlled strange flying treasures to overtake them. They looked very young and should not be more than 1,000 years old. Uncle. Jun Changshao asked, are these the contestants? Yes. Gu Tianqing pointed at the tokens hanging from everyone's waists and said, these are the outstanding geniuses who obtained a spot in the preliminaries. It's just a galactic competition. Won't there be more experts in the finals 2 years later? Jun Changshao asked. Of course. Gu Tianqing said, based on the previous 10 tournaments, the geniuses who have made it to the finals already possess strength second only to the half-step heavenly secret realm. No half-step. Yes. Gu Tianqing said, but it's relatively small. That's true. Jun Changshao thought to himself, Yi Xingchen and the others have been stuck at the peak of the truth-seeking realm for so many years without making a breakthrough. It will only be more difficult for the others. Don't think that way. The system promptly poured cold water on him. There are countless opportunities in the world. Even if your disciple didn't encounter one, perhaps a stone picked up by the roadside is a supreme artifact. This, Jun Changshao was speechless. Fate was something that was hard to predict. Take himself for example. If he wasn't lucky enough to travel to another world and activate the system, he would definitely be like what some readers said. Without the system, he wouldn't even be worth a fart. In a magnificent hall, a shaggy-haired man with a naked upper body and strange demon beast tattoos walked over and knelt on one knee. Godfather. Rise. A loud voice came from the hall. Because the camera was locked on the shaggy-haired man, it could only be determined that the speaker was a man, but not his appearance. Godfather. The man said respectfully, what orders do you have? I've helped you register for the Universe Holy War. Immediately set off for the Tsangyan Galaxy to participate in the competition. The loud voice came. Yes. The shaggy-haired man cupped his hands. Swift and fierce. The loud voice sounded. You're my favorite godson. You must win the championship in the galactic competition this time. The shaggy-haired man said with a firm gaze, I won't let you down. Let's go. Yes. The shaggy-haired man left the magnificent hall and walked to a spacious area. He summoned a spherical airbag and merged into it. Shoo! The airbag tore through the void and merged into the endless universe. Shoo! 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 Moments later, more airbags flew out of the plane and headed in different directions. The shaggy-haired man sat in the cockpit. He first locked onto the coordinates of the Tsangyan Galaxy on the star map. He then looked at the starry sky scene in front of the window. His gaze turned cold. I'll let Godfather know that I'm the best wolf in his wolf-rearing plan. I, swift and fierce, will win the championship of the Tsangyan Galaxy. Upper Primordial Realm. Jun Changshao stopped at the main city where the galactic competition was held. He then recalled the nine-horned thundercloud dragon and followed Gu Tianqing into the city. The passers-by started discussing. Oh my god, that big guy couldn't be the nine-horned thundercloud beast that was born in the thundercloud layer, right? Rare level demon beast. TSK, these people's identities aren't simple. Just as they were discussing, the dragon tiger immortal beast landed. The handsome man and beautiful woman on its back jumped down. Their legs couldn't stop shaking. Along the way, being surrounded by demon beasts with powerful auras, one could imagine how terrifying the pressure was. Shoo! Shoo! At this moment, dozens of martial artists wearing light blue clothes flew over. The men were handsome and extraordinary while the women were elegant and refined. Daoyuan Sect disciples. The passers-by's eyes were filled with admiration. The upper primordial realm was also a plane with many sections. The most powerful force was the Daoyuan Sect. The galactic competition was held here, so it was considered their home ground. Eldest senior brother. A Daoyuan Sect disciple said, the elder has already booked a room. We just need to enter the city. And then the eldest senior brother who was standing in front of his fellow disciples nodded. Speaking of which, this person was emitting a cold aura. He should be an ice element martial cultivator. However, the smile on his face made people feel warm. Could this be the Daoyuan Sect's strongest disciple, Nangang Qingxian? That's him. Sure enough, his cold smile warms people's hearts. It's said that this Daoyuan Sect's eldest disciple and the ruins of N Sword Saint's granddaughter are the favorites to win this year's galactic competition. Boom! Boom! While everyone was discussing, the ground shook. Everyone looked back and saw a young man carrying a huge rock walking over on the official road under the setting sun. Behind him were sunken footprints. Make way! The passers-by moved aside. The young man walked to the city gate and held the token in his mouth. After the guard checked the authenticity, he glanced at the rock on his back and said, "You can go in, but you have to put this thing down." "All right." The young man let go. Boom! The rock that seemed to weigh 1,000 kilograms landed on the ground. It instantly shook the ground and stirred up dust. The passers-by waved their hands to disperse the dust. When the dust settled, they looked again and their eyes widened. Because half of the rock was sunken into the ground. Oh my god! How heavy must it be for it to crash into the ground when it landed? A top-notch martial cultivator. Everyone looked at the back of the young man who walked into the city. Once again, a respectful expression appeared on their faces. Did you see that? Jun Changshao, who had already found an inn to stay in, retracted his spiritual senses and looked at the several core disciples in the room. There are hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the galactic competition. You must go all out on the day of the competition. Yes. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others said in unison. At that moment, their blood seemed to be burning as they looked forward to the competition held in a few days. Then, they would compete with their strong opponents. Invincible. Jun Changshao looked at He Wudi, who had been silent from the beginning, and specially reminded him, "You have to be serious too." Swish! He Wudi immediately stood up from where Guyu was lying and said with his head held high, "This disciple will go all out." Chapter 1803. The interstellar competition was about to begin. More and more martial artists were pouring into the main city of the Upper Yuan realm. There were famous older generation powerhouses, as well as young and energetic rising stars. Experts were everywhere. Jun Changshao had nothing to do, so he brought rows of flowers to the bustling area to experience different local customs. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others were temporarily staying in an inn. They spent most of their time resting. After all, they had to be in peak condition before the start of the competition. Sigh. He Wudi lay on the bed and looked at the ceiling. His expression was a little conflicted. He wanted to keep a low profile. However, the patriarch wanted him to keep a high profile. If not for the sect of all times, He Wudi would never participate in such a high-profile large-scale competition. Forget it, forget it. After thinking for a while, he got up and sat on the bed. He rubbed his face with both hands and said with a serious expression, "The patriarch has treated me well. I can only do my best." He Wudi had decided to seriously invest in the competition. However, he was still considering whether to continue the same path as in the qualifiers. No. In the competition 3 years ago, I stumbled all the way to the finals and became the focus of the competition. I have to control my strength in this competition. During the qualifiers, He Wudi had been deliberately suppressing his cultivation. He won with difficulty and luck every time. This aroused the audience's curiosity. His acting skills were impeccable. Even Gu Tianqing could not tell. However, He Wudi's original intention was to see himself as the most ordinary existence among the masses. In the end, things did not go as he wished. He became the focus of the audience because he was too lucky and won repeatedly. On the contrary, although Yi Xingchen defeated his opponents quickly every time, everyone felt that it was boring after watching 3 to 5 matches. They were used to eating delicacies. It was actually quite good to have some pickled vegetables and radishes occasionally. He Wudi realized this, so he decided that when the competition started, he could not be too mediocre. He could use his strength to defeat his opponents appropriately so that he would not be noticed. In the city, Jun Changshao ate a piece of local specialty stinky tofu and felt that his soul was about to ascend to the heavens. Rows of flowers kept a distance from him and gently pinched her nose. "It's delicious." Jun Changshao brought over a serving and said, "Try it." Rows of Flowers hurriedly took a few steps back. Obviously, she was very resistant to this kind of smelly food. "If you don't eat, I'll eat." Jun Changshao ate another serving and thought to himself, "If I had to choose, I would rather eat stinky tofu every day than eat that woman's dark cuisine." The two of them continued to stroll along the bustling streets. Because one was very handsome and the other was very beautiful, they naturally became the focus of the passers-by. "Brat!" Suddenly, a cold shout came from the street, "Are you blind?" Because his voice was too loud, it immediately attracted the attention of the passers-by. They all turned around to look. "Let's go." Jun Changshao said, "Let's go and take a look." Rose of Flowers was a little stunned because her husband took the initiative to take her hand and walk to the area where the passers-by were watching. "You bumped into me." "Bullshit, I walked out of the shop." "You were the one who bumped into me." Jun Changshao squeezed through the crowd with Rose of Flowers and saw a burly middle-aged man and a rather frail-looking man with disheveled hair standing outside a shop. "What do you want?" the disheveled man said lightly. Compensate me. The middle-aged man always had a fierce look. At first glance, it was obvious that he was the kind of man with a bad temper. How much? 1,000 spirit stones. Here. The disheveled man waved his hand and threw a fist-sized spirit stone, saying, "Keep the change." When the passers-by saw this, they shook their heads and said, "This brat is too cowardly." In fact, many witnesses saw that the middle-aged man bumped into him head-on. It even felt like he did it on purpose. In the end, the person who was bumped into took the initiative to compensate. Holding the primordial stone that was more precious than 1,000 spirit stones, the middle-aged man's expression was a little stunned. He didn't expect the other party to be so straightforward. If he had known, he would have asked for more. "Stop!" The middle-aged man shouted, "I said 1,000 primordial stones." Jun Changshao was speechless. This guy clearly said 1,000 spirit stones, but suddenly changed his mind and asked for primordial stones. It was clearly extortion. As a peer, Gosheng despised him. The disheveled man stopped and said, "You're a little greedy. Cut the crap." The middle-aged man walked over and said, "Since you're in the wrong, quickly compensate." Boom. Suddenly, his body shook violently and his head tilted forward. The anger in his eyes was quickly replaced by dullness. The disheveled man stood in front of the middle-aged man. His right hand had already pierced through the man's chest. Then he leaned toward the man's ear and whispered, "Go to hell and ask for money." Poochie. He pulled out his bloody hand and turned to leave, ignoring the falling body. However, he looked at Jun Changshao and said, "You're quite fast." "It's all right." Gosheng shrugged. He and rows of flowers were standing behind the middle-aged man. The moment the other party attacked, they formed a barrier to protect themselves and avoid being splashed with blood. "If you're a contestant, I'd like to fight with you." The disheveled man had already walked away when he spoke. Jun Changshao frowned. This guy was a little unusual for him to go from admitting defeat to decisively killing him. "Husband." Rows of Flowers said solemnly, "The killing intent that this person released when he attacked just now was too terrifying." Yes. Killing intent could only be cultivated in endless killing. This meant that the disheveled man had experienced many life-and-death battles. This guy is very dangerous. Jun Changshao had seen the granddaughter of the ruins of End Sword Sage and the eldest disciple of the Daoyuan sect, but this was his only evaluation. Swish! Swish! At this moment, several streams of light flew over from afar and stopped the disheveled man. The leading old man shouted, "There are clear rules in the city that forbid fighting. Not only did you violate the rules, but you also killed someone. This is unforgivable." As expected, the law enforcement hall has been alerted. They'll definitely come out now that someone has died. There's going to be a good show. The passers-by discussed in low voices. The disheveled man calmly took out an item. It was a token with complicated patterns carved on it, as if hundreds of ghosts were dancing. The law enforcement hall experts saw this and had a trace of fear in their eyes. The leader even hurriedly stepped aside and ordered, "Quickly clean up the corpse." Yes. The subordinates started to get busy. The disheveled man walked straight, and the warriors on the road all avoided him like a flock of frightened birds. "His identity is not simple," Jun Changshao said. The law enforcement hall experts came aggressively but were discouraged when they saw the token. This person was not only dangerous, but he probably had a very strong background. Tisk, tisk. Gu Tianqing said, "I didn't expect the adopted son of the Sky Devil Emperor to also participate in this universe's sacred war." The adopted son of the Sky Devil Emperor? Jun Changshao's expression immediately became serious. Gu Tianqing said, "Rumor has it that the Sky Devil Emperor has 81 adopted sons, and each of them is a rare genius." Jun Changshao was speechless. Is this guy crazy? Why did he take in so many adopted sons? "I think," the system roared, "what you should be most concerned about is when Lord Gu came." Chapter 1804. After returning to the inn, Jun Changshao kept thinking about the scene earlier, about the man with the fluffy hair. A core disciple could also kill an upper-level truth-seeking realm expert, but the decisiveness and viciousness of the attack definitely couldn't compare. Couldn't Yi Xingqian do it? It wasn't that he couldn't, but it couldn't compare to the killing intent that erupted. To be exact, although Night Emperor was ruthless enough, the aura he revealed was more angry than killing intent, except when he faced Empress Ling Yao back then. The fluffy hair man was different. Jun Changshao clearly felt that the moment the other party attacked, the killing intent that erupted was extremely strong. If he had to describe it, it was like a beast that had been locked in a cage for too long suddenly jumped out to bite someone. It's not hard to imagine. The system said seriously, this person must have experienced a lot of life and death situations, otherwise it would be impossible for him to have such a strong killing intent. So, Jun Changshao said solemnly, I'm a little worried that I'll meet him. Since you've signed up and want to win the championship, this is unavoidable, the system said. Jun Changshao said, I thought that I could easily win the universe holy war, but now it seems that it's not that simple. Phew. He rubbed his face and said, why did I suddenly lose confidence? Uncle. Jun Changshao came to Gu Tianqing's room and said, can you tell me about the Sky Devil Emperor? The Xianyuan realm was destroyed by the Sky Devil Emperor. Since he had made a promise to Gu Xianyuan, he definitely wanted to know more about this person and his 81 adopted sons. He had no children, so he took in adopted sons. It was the most normal thing, but it was a bit exaggerated to take in so many. I don't know much about the Sky Devil Emperor. Gu Tianqing said, rumor has it that this person is extremely ambitious and wants to dominate the entire upper universe. Will the major planes agree? Jun Changshao said. Of course not. Gu Tianqing said, in recent years, the top planes of the various elements have been working together to resist. Working together? Jun Changshao was stunned. Is the Sky Devil Emperor very strong? I've heard that in the entire upper universe, there isn't a single plane that can fight against the Celestial Demon Emperor alone. Even the once glorious Xianyuan realm was destroyed. Even Gu Xianyuan, who reigned supreme throughout the ages, was killed. When Gu Tianqing mentioned Gu Xianyuan, a look of reverence appeared in his eyes. In terms of age and seniority, he was a junior while Gu Xianyuan was a senior. He had heard all kinds of legends about Gu Xianyuan, but he had never had the chance to meet him. Why did he take in so many foster sons? Jun Changshao asked. Because. Gu Tianqing said, raising wolves. Raising wolves? Jun Changshao was at a loss. Gu Tianqing explained, every year, the Celestial Demonic Emperor will search for children with outstanding aptitude who have no parents in the upper universe. Then, he will gather them in one plane and raise them. It's called the Wolf Raising Plan. Whoever survives in the end will be adopted as his adopted son. Survive? Jun Changshao asked, what do you mean? Thousands of children are locked in a sealed plane. They have to snatch food and resources in order to survive. They don't even hesitate to kill each other until the last one is left. Damn! Jun Changshao cursed angrily, that's too damn cruel. Children should have enjoyed a beautiful childhood, but in the end, they had to kill each other in order to survive. How inhumane! So, Gu Tianqing said, the Celestial Demonic Emperor is a demon who combines ambition and evil. It's just that he's too powerful. No one in the upper universe can do anything to him. Jun Changshao's eyes turned cold and sharp. If he didn't get rid of such a thoroughly evil villain, how could he have the face to be the protagonist of justice? Of course. Go Sheng was still very calm. The major planes in the upper universe had to join forces to contend against him. He definitely couldn't do it alone. He could only develop wretchedly for the time being. When the time was right, he would arm wrestle with him. No wonder that guy has such a terrifying murderous intent when he kills people. Jun Changshao came to a realization. It turns out that he has been through killing since he was young. Gu Tianqing said, "Every wolf raised by the celestial demonic emperor is very brutal." Ha! Jun Changshao sneered and said, "Aren't you afraid of being raised as ingrates?" Wolves were wild and greedy. If they were raised as pets, who knew when they would suddenly bite back? No. Gu Tianqing said, "The celestial demonic emperor is very cautious. Without absolute control, he won't play with fire. That's because he didn't touch me." Jun Changshao sat down and took a sip of tea. "As long as you dance well, there's no corner that you can't poach. Who knows, I might even poach all the wolves they raised." "Kid," Gu Tianqing said in a deep voice, "if you want to live for another 2 years, you'd better not provoke the celestial demonic emperor." Jun Changshao scratched his head and said with a smile, "I was just saying." In the inn next door, Ling Li booked a room and checked in. Because what happened on the street had already spread in the city, many martial artists gathered in the cafeteria on the first floor and were discussing in low voices. "The one who just came in is the adopted son of the celestial demonic emperor." "Damn, which son is he? Who knows?" When everyone was discussing, there was fear in their eyes. Even a powerhouse like Gu Tianqing was warning Jun Changshao not to provoke the celestial demonic emperor. Naturally, the passers-by were also very afraid of people related to him. Ling Li lay on the bed and looked at the ceiling. The long journey to the upper elemental realm made him a little tired, so he decided to rest, but his eyes were always open. This was a habit. Whether it was day or night, he would sleep with his eyes open. Some people would ask, "Won't the eyes dry?" No, this was not a question of doing it or not. This was a manifestation of absolute vigilance. At most, it would increase the risk of cataracts over time. More and more powerhouses and contestants entered the main city, and the solemn atmosphere before the competition became more and more intense. A few days later, a gun salute sounded in the city, and the galactic competition began. As usual, early in the morning, Jun Changshao put on a mink coat and sunglasses, carried a stereo, and went to the venue. Then, he sat on the spectator stand and naturally propped his legs on the platform. All the big shots present were speechless. This young man who came in with Gu Tianqing was really asking for a beating. At the venue of the competition, spectators came in one after another, and there was no lack of people in the same clothes. They were probably there to cheer for their own contestants. As for the disciples of the sect of all times, they were led by the officials to the contestants' area and waited to enter. Phew! Li Tian took a deep breath. After going through the preliminaries, he was much more accustomed to it and was not too nervous. "Contestants, please enter," the person in charge said loudly. "Let's go." Lu Qianqian took the lead and walked toward the aisle that seemed to lead to the light. Li Qingyang and the others followed closely behind. "Young master, you can do it. Senior brother is mighty." The contestants entered the venue one after another, and there were shouts and screams from the spectator stand. The scene was a little out of control. Very soon, thousands of geniuses gathered. There were as many planes in a galaxy as there were stars in the sky, and they all sent out 50 people, so the scale of the competition was naturally large. TSK. Jun Changshao said, "They're all very strong. This is nothing." Gu Tianqing said, "On the day of the finals, all the contestants who are qualified to enter the venue are all geniuses of their galaxy." Jun Changshao nodded in agreement. He looked at the area in the north where there were relatively fewer people and said, "Why isn't Zhaoxi there?" "He's in the seated area." Gu Tianqing said, "He can be guaranteed a place in the top 500. Jun Changshao turned his head and said enviously, "Having such a strong father can really make people struggle less for most of their lives." Chapter 1805. Gu Tianqing was considered a celebrity in the Blue Cloud department, so his son, Gu Zhaoxi, did not need to participate in the preliminaries and directly advanced. He was even guaranteed to enter the top 500 as a seeded contestant. This made Jun Changshao very envious. As expected. With such a good father, his starting line was further than others. I will work hard to become the strongest in the universe and then let my son participate in the sacred war and directly enter the finals. Jun Changshao secretly said. Hee hee. The system laughed. Gu Zhaoxi was not the only one in the seated area. Jian Xiaohong, Nangong Qingxian, and the others were also there. Although they relied on their identity and background to enter, it was undeniable that they were all the top geniuses in the Blue Cloud department. Uncle. Jun Changshao looked at the disheveled man standing in the venue like a lone wolf and said, he is the adopted son of the Sky Devil Emperor. Why didn't he enter the seated area? Because he is not a native of the Blue Cloud department. Gu Tianqing explained. Oh. Jun Changshao responded. Contestants, please come up to the stage and draw your tokens. The person in charge said loudly. Unlike the preliminaries, the galaxy's main competition used a lottery system. Babies. Jun Changshao said, don't draw one of our own. According to the rules of the main competition, only the top 10 contestants could obtain the entry ticket to the Sacred War. If they wanted to complete the epic mission or even exceed the quota, they had to let more disciples enter the top 10. If they drew one of their own to fight in a civil war, it was equivalent to losing a chance. In the center of the venue, the contestants successively drew tokens from the boxes arranged in layers of arrays. Perhaps because of Jun Changxiao's prayer, Li Qingyang and the others were not matched with their fellow disciples after drawing lots, successfully avoiding a civil war at the beginning. It was not that the author deliberately arranged it. After all, with thousands of participants participating in the competition, the probability of drawing one of their own was too low. The Universe Sacred War, Blue Cloud Department's main competition, begins now. The person in charge said loudly, He Woody with the number 1 token and Li Tianjue with the number 2 token, come to the first stage. He Woody walked up with a speechless expression. In the preliminaries, they were the first to go on stage, and in the main competition, they were the first to go on stage. He clearly wanted to keep a low profile, but things always went against his wishes. Brat. On the spectator stand, Gu Tianqing said, This Li Tianjue is quite strong. I'm afraid your disciple will be eliminated. Impossible. Jun Changshao said confidently, Woody is very strong. Uncle Gu did not know the depth of He Woody's abilities, but as a patriarch, he knew very well that if he were to get serious, he would definitely be invincible in this competition for young people. Most importantly, don't act as me. Ta. He Woody stopped on the stage. Because he was the first contestant to fight, he naturally became the center of attention. Boom! At this moment, the number 2 holder, Li Tianjue, landed on the opposite side like a cannonball. He was wearing armor and carrying a heavy sword on his back. Even though each of his fingers was wearing a priceless treasure ring that increased his attributes, Li Tianjue still couldn't move. In gaming terms, it was equivalent to a 6-piece set of godly equipment. On the contrary, He Woody was wearing a school uniform. Although the style was different, it was a little too plain. Who will win? Is there a need to guess? It will definitely be number 2. The audience discussed in private. Because He Woody did not release too strong of an aura, everyone subconsciously believed that Li Tianjue, who was fully equipped, would win. Hey! Li Tianjue said, Show me your weapon. Sorry. He Woody shook his head and said, I prefer to use my fists. Ha! Li Tianjue said, a little arrogant. He Woody was not arrogant, but his exclusive weapon was a door. If he took it out in this kind of situation, he would definitely be laughed at. Alright. Li Tianjue took the heavy sword from his back. His eyes flashed with battle intent and said, Since you don't use your weapon, don't blame me for using my weapon to bully you. Match, begin. At this moment, the referee shouted. Whoosh! Li Tianjue did not want to waste time. Before the referee finished speaking, he rushed over. His heavy sword moved close to the ground and then suddenly slashed into the air. Scorching sun slash. Whoosh whoosh. A wave of sword chi that was full of heavy power burst out. What should I do? Should I continue to keep a low profile, or, just as the sword aura was about to arrive, Woody took the time to glance at Patriarch and found that he was smiling at him. He immediately made a choice. Ta! He took a step forward and punched with his right fist. His movement was not fast or slow, and his strength was not strong or weak. Then, when it came into contact with the sword aura, it instantly broke it violently. Fuck! Gu Tianqing was so shocked that he almost stood up. The disciple of the sect of all times who had fought his way into the main competition actually broke the sword aura with a punch. Uncle! Jun Changshao said, calm down. Boom! At this moment, another explosion came from the first arena. Li Tianjue, who was fully equipped, staggered back and then fell outside the arena. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Woody retracted his palm and cupped his hands. Thank you for letting me win. The spectator stands fell into silence. Everyone stared at him in disbelief. Everyone thought that Li Tianjue would win, but he was instantly defeated by someone they did not think highly of. How is this possible? Gu Tianqing had already stood up. The shock in his heart was especially strong. Was Li Tianjue weak? Not weak, but very strong. In the end, he was defeated by Woody with a single palm. This made him feel like he was dreaming. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head. This disciple of mine is usually too low-key. It's rare for him to be so high-profile today. Uncle Gu's jaw almost fell off. Fuck. Su Xiaoma, who was waiting to enter the arena, said in surprise, Junior brother why are you so serious? Not only Gu Tianqing, but the other disciples of the sect of all times were also used to the low-key Woody. They were all surprised when he suddenly defeated his opponent. This is troublesome. Yi Xingchen's gaze was solemn. To him, if he wanted to win the main competition, the biggest threat was not the participants, but the serious Woody. This person is quite strong. The geniuses in the seated area all looked over. As the first to enter the arena and quickly defeating his opponent, Woody successfully attracted their attention. Since it's a competition, you should enjoy the process of the competition. Why do you have to defeat him instantly? Jian Xiaohong put her hands on the stage and pouted. Miss Jian. Nangong Qingxian said, if you are stronger than your opponent, ending the competition as soon as possible is also a form of respect. TCH Sun Xiaohong snorted, I'm talking to myself. Why are you interrupting? Nangong Qingxian smiled politely. Everyone said that the granddaughter of the ruins of N Sword Saint had a strange temper. Today, he saw that the rumors were true. After winning, Woody walked down the stage. His heart was in pain because he had defeated a strong opponent in front of everyone. It went against his original intention of being low-key. No. I must restrain myself in the next round. Woody was not used to being the center of attention, so he planned to act again. Boom! Boom! The other stages began to compete one after another. Those who participated in the main competition were all top geniuses, so the fighting scenes were particularly exciting. The audience even stood up and applauded when the fight was intense. Li Tian, holding number 86, and Ling Li, holding number 87, come on stage. Who? Li Tian took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. In the spectator area, Jun Changshao frowned because his disciple's opponent was the fluffy-haired man who had defeated the scammer yesterday. Chapter 1806. Many top geniuses were here for the interstellar tournament. However, in Jun Changshao's view, the most threatening person to his disciple was none other than the disheveled man named Ling Li. The reason was simple. This was a wolf that had survived a cruel environment. Especially when he killed the blackmailer with one punch yesterday, his eyes were filled with killing intent and brutality. Ta! Ling Li walked onto the stage. At this moment, no matter how one looked at him, he gave off a very ordinary feeling. The more ordinary it was, the more Jun Changshao was worried. Kid! Gu Tianqing said solemnly, be mentally prepared. Although Li Tiantian had defeated Chu Wangya in the qualifiers and proved himself, his opponent this time was the foster son of the Celestial Devil Emperor. Unless, his opponent was Li Qingyang or Yi Xingchen. Sorry for the trouble. He Wudi frowned. Li Tiantian seemed to realize that his opponent was a bit strong, and his originally nervous mood calmed down. Tianqing. Jun Changshao said telepathically, if you can't beat him, you can surrender. Li Tiantian wanted to cry. The patriarch had lost hope in him before the match even started. It wasn't that Jun Changshao didn't have hope, but he didn't want his disciple to be hurt because this Ling Li was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Who knew if he would suddenly become violent? It was just a match. If he lost, there were other disciples. There was no need to fight a wolf head-on. However, Li Tiantian didn't think so. Since he was representing the sect of all times, even if he lost, he would lose with dignity. Surrender? No way. Swish. Li Tiantian straightened his body and said, Sect of all times disciple, Li Tiantian, please enlighten me. This guy is really going to fight head-on. Jun Changshao originally wanted to continue to dissuade him, but he immediately dismissed the idea after feeling the unyielding momentum. This was his disciple's decision. How could he interfere? Junior brother. Su Xiaoma cheered for Li Tiantian in his heart, you can do it. Ling Li did not speak from the beginning to the end. There was no emotion in his eyes. He stood there like a wooden stake. Battle, begin. Swish! Just as the referee shouted, Ling Li suddenly appeared in front of Gu Tianqing. His right hand gathered a powerful energy that pierced through the air and blasted towards Li Tianqing. His speed was so fast that it shocked Gu Tianqing. Not good. Jun Changshao frowned. Boom! All of a sudden, the sound of an explosion rang out in the arena, bringing with it surging waves of air. Buzz! Buzz! Ripples visible to the naked eye spread out layer by layer. Fuck! Such a big commotion. The audience was dumbfounded. He Woody's performance just now was already very fierce, but compared to his fierce attack, there was still a big gap. From this, it could be seen that he had to win the competition. Who? On the arena, the airwaves were gradually blown away by the wind. Li Tiantian stood at the edge, one hand clutching his chest, a pained expression on his face. He didn't fall. Ling Li was a little surprised. Li Tiantian rubbed his chest, took a few steps forward, and said, I'm not that weak. Is that so? A smile appeared on the corner of Ling Li's mouth. Jun Changshao's frown deepened. At that moment, he seemed to see this guy slowly taking off his sheepskin, planning to transform into a brutal wolf. Swish! Suddenly, Ling Li disappeared. When Jun Changshao's mind followed, the other party appeared in front of Li Tiantian again and attacked his waist with his elbow. Fast, ruthless, and accurate. Boom! Li Tiantian could not keep up with the other party's speed at all. He was hit again and staggered backward. Swish! Ling Li suddenly attacked his face again. Boom! Boom! In an instant, dense fingerprints exploded on the arena. Because Li Tiantian was in an unbalanced state, he could not dodge in time and could only be hit while retreating. Junior brother. Su Xiaoma clenched his fists. Yi Xingchen sat down and clasped his hands together. Anger gradually gathered in his eyes. He could see that Ling Li was deliberately chasing after Li Tiantian, and the angle of attack was relatively outside. He did not intend to blast Li Tiantian out of the arena. It was a game of cat and mouse. Boom! Thump, thump, thump. After a series of crazy attacks, Li Tiantian retreated dozens of steps. When he stabilized his body with difficulty, he could not suppress the restless blood and suddenly vomited. "Kid," Gu Tianqing said, "let him forfeit." It was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. The other party seemed to be deliberately playing with him. The wise choice was to jump off the arena. God has his own choice, Jun Changshao said seriously. He also hoped that Li Tiantian would forfeit, but in such a big arena, with so many people watching, that guy would not admit defeat so easily. Strong. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Li Tiantian grinned. The observant audience noticed that although this guy was being chased and attacked from the beginning, his knees did not bend. "You can admit defeat and jump off the stage," Ling Li said. His words were flat and emotionless, but it gave people a feeling of arrogance. The anger in Yixingchen's eyes intensified. "Kid! Don't meet me." If Ling Li had beaten up someone else, no matter how arrogant he was, Yixingchen would not have cared. However, the one who was beaten up was a fellow disciple of the same sect. This was something that he could not tolerate. "I will only lose. I will not admit defeat." Li Tiantian took a deep breath and suppressed the pain in his body. He raised his head and puffed out his chest again. At that moment, his unyielding aura infected the audience. "All right," Ling Li said, "as you wish." Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. Because Li Tiantian was unable to catch his opponent's movements, he was beaten up the entire time. One moment, he was beaten from left to right, and the next moment, he was sent flying from bottom to top. This was the first time a disciple of the sect of all times had been crushed so miserably. Li Qingyang, Su Xiaoma, and the others could only watch helplessly from below the stage as their fellow disciple was beaten up. They could only clench their fists and feel helpless. Huff! Huff! Yixingchen's breathing quickened. At this moment, he was still sitting on the ground with his fingers tightly clenched. However, the anger in his eyes was so strong that it almost ignited his hair. Boom! Li Tiantian was hit again. He retreated until he finally stabilized himself at the edge of the stage. He spat out another mouthful of blood. His meridians were seriously damaged. He was already at the end of his rope. Man! Too tenacious. The audience looked at him with admiration. After being beaten up for so long, he was still able to stand. He deserved everyone's respect. Sect. Patriarch. Li Tiantian slowly raised his head. His face was beaten so badly that he could not bear to look at it. He said, I'm sorry. I really can't take it anymore." Plop. His body fell straight to the ground. The referee hurried over. After a brief observation, he said, 10, 9, 8, every countdown was like a sharp knife stabbing into Li Tiantian's heart. He wanted to stand up, but his injuries did not allow him to do so. He could only look up at the sky as tears flowed uncontrollably. Me. Li Tiantian. The disgrace of the sect of all times. 1. After the referee finished counting down, he immediately announced, "The winner is Ling Li." Damn it! Yixingchen stood up. If the rage points were displayed at the top of his head, it would definitely be full. In fact, it might even explode. Senior Yi. Just as Yixingchen was about to charge onto the stage, a hand was placed on his shoulder. Then, he saw He Woody walk in front of him and say with a cold gaze, "Leave him to me." Very good. Jun Changshao said, "Woody is going to be serious." If not for Gu Tianqing, if not for the fact that there were so many people around, he would probably have stood up and put one foot on the stage, roaring crazily, "Woody, beat this little wolf to death for me." Chapter 1807. Why did Li Tianxian say that he was the disgrace of the sect of all times? Because he knew that his fellow sect members had never lost a major competition like this. Yes. The sect tournament at the beginning, and the battle of dragons and tigers at the end. As long as there were disciples of the sect of all times participating in the tournament, not to mention being eliminated, even the champion would not fall into the hands of others. Today, Li Tianxian lost. He ended the undefeated record of his seniors and juniors. Thus, the moment he fell, he cried. He cried so hard that his heart and lungs were torn apart. Although he was not a core disciple of the sect of all times, Li Tianxian's sense of belonging was not weaker than anyone else's. It was because he valued it too much that he could not accept his defeat and the fact that he had shamed the sect of all times. That was why he cried in front of everyone. Did anyone laugh at him? No. The passers-by only admired him more. Because from the beginning of the battle until he fell to the ground due to exhaustion, his legs were straight. June Patriarch Gu Tianqing gave him a thumbs up. Your disciple has backbone. His face was almost swollen from predicting the outcome of the sect of all times competition. Only this time he guessed correctly, but he did not feel any joy. Instead, he felt deep respect for Li Tianxian. As long as one was not blind, anyone could see that Ling Li was very strong. He could have ended the battle quickly, but he fought for an hour until his opponent was exhausted. Just like the comments left by the readers in the previous chapter, if you don't surrender, you won't allow him to fight? Fine. No problem. But the problem was that he was deliberately toying with him. Ling Li had defeated Li Tianxian in one move. Although the disciples of the sect of all times would be unhappy, they were not as skilled as him. At most, they would fight with all their strength and avenge their fellow sect members. But in reality, they were furious that he had been beaten for an hour in front of everyone and deliberately did not leave the stage. Especially Yi Xingqian, he could not tolerate it. The author was afraid that he would be seen as biased, so he explained so much and took the opportunity to make things worse. But Knight Emperor, who pursued revenge, was not so worried. When he saw his fellow sect member being beaten, he had to beat him back. Reason. This emperor is happy to do so. It didn't matter whether Knight Emperor was happy or not, because He Wudi wasn't happy either. He had been thinking about whether he should keep a low profile in the next round of the competition, but now he had completely dispelled that idea. He even wanted to fly high into the sky, tear apart his school uniform, and roar, "I'm not human anymore." As if realizing that he was being stared at by many angry eyes, Ling Li turned around and looked at the disciples of the sect of all times. He spread out his hands indifferently and said, he wanted to lose fair and square. Is it wrong for me to fulfill his wish? Yi Xingqian was furious. These words sounded as calm as water, but they were absolutely arrogant to the extreme. There is more. Ling Li looked at all the contestants present, touched his nose, and said, you can only fight for second place in this galactic competition because... A sinister smile appeared on his face. First place is mine. That smile, that voice. It was as if a sheep had suddenly turned into a wild wolf. Jun Changshao was not surprised, because he knew that this person was not a good person after witnessing him kill the scammer. Too arrogant. Ling Li's words angered everyone. Hee. The top geniuses in the seated area laughed. My grandfather said that young people can be arrogant, but they can't be too arrogant, Jian Xiaohong said indifferently. Otherwise, when you die, no one will collect your corpse. No. Ling Li walked down from the arena and said, you should know about my adoptive father's plan to raise a wolf. You should also understand that the only thing I can do now is collect other people's corpses. At that moment, his eyes and words revealed an extremely strong killing intent. Jian Xiaohong was silent. To be precise, after feeling the killing intent, she smelled danger. This wolf. Gu Tianqing said, very cruel. Clap. 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 At that moment, applause came from the side. Everyone looked over and saw Jun Changshao standing up while clapping. He said, You dare to say such arrogant words in front of all the geniuses of the Ashen Cloud faculty. In terms of pretentiousness, I'm not as good as you. Don't misunderstand. I'm not pretentious. Ling Li pointed at Li Tiantian, who was lying on the ground, and said with a smile, I rely on my strength. Jun Changxiao's face darkened. He sat down again, then lowered his head and said, Did you all hear that? Yes. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others shouted. What should we do next? Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In an instant, all the disciples of the sect of all times in the venue unleashed their cultivation and roared angrily, defeat him. Completely destroy him. Fuck. The audience widened their eyes. These disciples of the sect of all times were quite docile just now. Why did they suddenly become so violent? Especially the guy with a long face. His killing intent and anger coexisted. He was simply like a demon that walked out of hell. They were angry. The sect of all times was angry. Stomp. Jun Changxiao stood up again. With one foot on the stage, he pointed at the arrogant Ling Li and roared, You must crawl out of today's competition. I, Jun Changxiao, said it. Lu Qianqian, Li Qingyang, Su Xiaoma, Xiao Ziji, Yi Xingchen, and He Wudi all looked over. Because they were all in their respective battle zones, they just happened to be surrounded. Ling Li was a wolf. Then, the few core disciples present were lions. The geniuses of the Zhangyan faculty were also provoked. However, under the powerful aura of the sect of all times, they were reduced to little transparent. These people. Nangong Qingxian said, they're not simple. Jian Xiaohong swept her gaze across the disciples of the sect of all times one by one. Her gaze finally landed on Zhou Hong. She said with interest, Grandfather is right. There are countless geniuses in this world. The competition continues. The next round of contestants, please come on stage. The organizer said loudly. Swoosh! Su Xiaoma flew to the stage first and carried the heavily injured Li Tiantian down. The latter cried even more miserably and said, Senior brother. I've let down the patriarch, let down the sect. Victory and defeat are common in war. Su Xiaoma comforted, the patriarch and your fellow sect members won't blame you. Woo, Li Tiantian wailed loudly. It could be seen that losing to Ling Li and breaking the sect of all times winning streak was a heavy blow to him. Whether or not he could walk out of the self-blame needed to be written separately. Junior brother. Su Xiaoma comforted, you have to be able to let go. It's not a life and death battle. Why care about winning or losing? It was undeniable that this guy had a big mouth. However, he was still concerned about his fellow sect members. Even if he won the competition, he immediately came over to comfort him. It was very good to heal Li Tiantian's wounded heart. The competition was still ongoing. Lu Qianqian, Li Qingyang, and the others went on stage one after another. Because Li Tiantian was brutally beaten up, they no longer hid and wanted to end the battle quickly. They only hoped to enter the next round faster and draw that arrogant Ling Li junior brother. People can't be too calculative about winning or losing. Junior brother, look at me. I've been beaten to death by junior brother Yi every day. Aren't I still very happy? Junior brother, second round, number 1 Su Xiaoma, number 2 Ling Li, please come on stage. Hearing his name, Su Xiaoma flipped over the number he got in the second round and realized that he was holding number 1. He angrily stood up and said, Junior brother, senior brother will take revenge for you. Chapter 1808. The first round of the competition was over. Apart from Li Tianshang, all the disciples of the sect of all times had successfully advanced. According to the rules, they had to draw lots again to determine their opponents for the second round. In the end, Su Xiaoma was the first to face Ling Li. This arrangement looked so deliberate that even the system could not help but want to complain. Junior brother. Li Qingyang said, don't be careless. Although he was angry that Li Tianshang had been abused, he could not deny that Ling Li was indeed capable. He had to be extremely careful when dealing with such an opponent. Understood. Su Xiaomo walked toward the arena. However, just as he was about to go up, he suddenly stopped. This was because Yi Xingqian said telepathically, admit defeat and leave him to me. Gou Sheng's expression became interesting. Junior brother, this is a star system competition. The Patriarch values it so much. How can you make me admit defeat? There's still the revival round. What's there to be afraid of? Yi Xingqian said. Su Xiaomo was speechless. Of course, if he lost and entered the losers bracket, he could enter the finals. However, since he was matched up, he also wanted to abuse that arrogant guy. Yi Xingqian said, give me some face. Su Xiaomo was conflicted. He secretly looked at the Patriarch in the spectator stands and saw that he was smiling at him. He immediately understood. All right. Su Xiaomo said, I'll leave him to you. However, he walked toward the arena and said with a cold gaze, before I lose, I want to abuse him. Up to you. Yi Xingqian did not object. If such an arrogant guy fell into Su Xiaomo's hands, it would be hard for him to swallow the anger of Li Tiantian's defeat if he could not personally trample him in the palm of his hand. At this moment, it could be seen that although Knight Emperor was usually cold and aloof, and was very resistant to relationships, he valued relationships with his fellow disciples. That was exactly the case. Su Xiaomo decided to go easy on him and let him teach Ling Li a lesson. This would help improve their relationship. In the spectator stands, Gu Tianqing said worriedly, I'm afraid your disciple is also in danger. Uncle. Jun Changshao proudly said, bubbly foam is a core disciple. These few simple words were filled with absolute confidence. Li Tiantian could only be considered a relatively outstanding inner disciple in the sect of all times. People like Su Xiaomo and Xiao Ziji were all core disciples who had been nurtured with all their might. Especially since they had been at the peak of the seeking truth realm for a long time, their strength should not be below any of the geniuses of the Blue Cloud department. This point, the system admitted as well. Although Li Tiantian, Long Xiang, and the others had also broken through to the peak, but regardless of strength or comprehension, they were far from the core disciples. To be more precise, although they were in the same realm, they were not on the same level. Besides, looking at Su Xiaomo, who was walking up the stage, Jun Changshao said, my disciple focuses on speed. Li Tiantian lost to Ling Li because his opponent's attack speed was too fast. If it wasn't for his body that had been tempered in the sect, he would have died in one round. What about Su Xiaomo? He happened to be a speed player. Jun Changshao was very confident, so he had a smile on his face the whole time. Ta! Su Xiaomo walked up the stage. Seeing that the Patriarch was still smiling at him, he became even more determined. What was he thinking? Go easy on junior brother Yi. Match, begin. When Ling Li walked up, the referee announced the start of the match. Swoosh! In an instant, Su Xiaomo's speed exploded, and his whole body seemed to have merged into the space. Damn! This speed is too fast. Seeing the afterimages on the stage, the audience was a little dazzled. Swish! Suddenly, Su Xiaomo circled behind Ling Li and kicked him in the neck from the side. Her speed was so fast and her strength was so strong that even the air around her was distorted. However, at the moment of contact, he suddenly remembered Yi Xingqian's previous words, give me face, and immediately restrained some of his power. Since junior brother said so. As a senior brother, he had to give him face. Boom! Su Xiaomo obviously slowed down his speed and power. Ling Li blocked with his right hand and clenched his left hand, gathering the explosive energy and throwing it over. Swish! Swish! Su Xiaomo rolled back like a monkey, then he half-squatted and slid to the edge of the stage with one hand on the ground. He said calmly, "Your reaction is too slow." Ling Li frowned slightly. Swish, he took a step forward and instantly closed in. The afterimages of his fists suddenly filled the stage. It was the same close combat, the same attacking method. Although Li Tian could catch it, he couldn't dodge it at all. Su Xiaoma dodged left and right calmly. Gu Tianqing narrowed his eyes. He saw the two of them fighting clearly in the afterimages and airwaves. He was surprised that one of them attacked decisively, while the other dodged decisively. In terms of speed, neither of them was at a disadvantage. "Uncle," Jun Changshao said, "this is the core disciple of the sect of all times. I believe you know how strong he is." Boom! At this time, Su Xiaoma found an opening while he was frantically moving and dodging. He jumped up and kicked Ling Li's neck, forcing him to take a few steps back. His eyes flashed with anger. Too slow. Su Go landed on the ground and patted his shoes with his hands, looking as arrogant as he could be. Swish! Ling Li tore off his shirt, revealing the wolf tattoo. His eyes flashed with hostility. "You've angered me." Swish, he rushed over again. In his rage, his speed increased greatly. However, Su Xiaoma was a loach. No matter how violent the opponent's attacks were, he could always easily dodge and even counterattack with small openings. Boom! Boom! The two of them exchanged dozens of blows on the stage. The sharp-eyed Gu Tianqing saw that Su Xiaoma had hit Ling Li 7 or 8 times. The latter didn't even touch the corner of his shirt. TSK. Your disciple is very sneaky." Looking at the situation, Su Xiaoma had the upper hand. However, Gu Tianqing was still optimistic about Ling Li because the opponent's explosive power was stronger. As long as he caught him once, it would definitely be enough to make him suffer. But in reality, Gou Sheng became more sneaky and slippery the more he fought. As a result, the two of them had been fighting for more than 10 minutes. Ling Li had been beaten up dozens of times. His face and chest were full of footprints. "That's enough," Yi Xingqian said, "Hurry up and admit defeat." He was afraid that Su Xiaoma would exhaust this kid. When they fought, he would be lying on the ground and unable to get up. Then, he would lose the fun of playing cat and mouse. Okay. Su Xiaoma was also done playing. He directly rushed over. Die! Ling Li roared angrily and smashed his right fist into the void. He had repeated this attack many times, but it always missed. So, he didn't have much hope. In the end, Su Xiaoma crashed into it and fell outside the stage with a scream. Silence. Understood. Jun Changshao, who had been smiling all this time, suddenly froze. Ah! Su Xiaoma fell to the ground, clutching his chest and screaming, "It hurts, it hurts." In his heart, he thought, "Patriarch, did I act well? Damn you." At this moment, Jun Changshao's roaring voice suddenly exploded in his ears. "He Woody didn't act as me. You acted as me." Su Xiaoma, who was trying his best to act, was a little confused. "No. You kept smiling at me. Didn't you want me to cooperate with junior brother Yi to go easy on you? Big mouth Su." Jun Changshao roared, "When you go back, take the initiative to go to the discipline hall." Patriarch Su Xiaoma got up, hugged his head and said sadly, "Listen to my explanation." "I'm not listening." Bastard chanting. Chapter 1809. Jun Changshao was furious. To be exact, he did not know that Yi Xingqian and Su Xiaoma had already made a deal in private. He had planned to let his disciple torture this wolf in front of everyone, but he had deliberately acted as himself. Before the start of the match, Jun Changshao had been worried that he would act, so he kept smiling at him. His meaning was obvious, he had to take it seriously. As the leader of the imagination trio, He Woody quickly understood. Therefore, he defeated his opponent beautifully in the first round. Although this disciple was lazy, he had good judgment. Similarly, Su Xiaoma also saw the patriarch smiling and decided to go easy on Yixingchen. In reality, it was a perfect misunderstanding. As expected, Gu Tianqing said, "In the face of absolute power, no matter how fast you are, you will not be able to withstand a single blow." He did not see that Su Xiaoma was acting. As for the communication between the two Go Sheng, it was also through voice transmission. What did this mean? That's right. Su Xiaoma's acting was on point. Other than Jun Changshao, who understood his strength and immediately guessed that he was acting, no one else in the audience could see through it. Of course, he had been a spy before and had almost become the patriarch. Jun Patriarch. Gu Tianqing comforted him, "Your disciple has lasted until now and even caused quite a bit of trouble for his opponent. Although he lost, it's still an honorable defeat." Jun Changshao did not say anything. It was clearly a sure-win situation, but Big Mouth Su ended up acting. How infuriating. In the fighting ring, Ling Li was still in a punching position, but there was a look of astonishment in his eyes. Su Xiaoma was more slippery than a loach. He did not expect to hit him when he attacked, but not only did he succeed, but he also punched him out of the ring. Unexpected. Too unexpected. Just like Gu Tianqing, he did not realize that Su Xiaoma was deliberately acting, so he withdrew his fist with a sneer. Hiss. Pain came from his muscles. Being kicked repeatedly on the body was extremely uncomfortable. However, to be fair, this guy's physical strength was not bad. Although he was kicked by Su Xiaoma into a sorry state, it was only a superficial wound. Shua! Ling Li walked down from the fighting ring. Brat! When she walked past Yixingchen, she heard him say in a sinister tone, "You should pray that you don't meet me in the next round." Oh! Ling Li responded. Yixingchen's eyes burned with rage as he watched Yixingchen leave. He was already fantasizing about how he would trample Yixingchen on the arena. The second round continued. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others still won. Because the seeded players were still in the recommendation area, the other contestants were not a threat to them at all. Very soon, the drawing of lots for the third round began. Unfortunately, no one drew swift and fierce this round. Boom! In the ring, Yixingchen defeated his opponent with a single punch as the referee announced the start of the match. This person is not ordinary either. After a few rounds, they all ended the match quickly. The disciples sent by the Sect of all times are all very strong. After watching a few rounds of matches, all the martial artists realized that the disciples of the Sect of all times were all very capable. Even Li Tian, who was eliminated in the first round, might not have been eliminated if his opponent was different. Brat! Gu Tianqing could not help but ask, "How did you train him?" He was already shocked by the preliminaries. Now that he was in a higher level of competition, he could still defeat the heavens, earth, and air. This was unbelievable. Jun Changshao did not say a word. All he wanted now was for his disciple to meet Ling Li as soon as possible and torture him until he wished he was dead. Things did not go as he wished. They did not meet in the fourth round either. Night Emperor was anxious. Seeing that guy defeat his opponent in seconds and showing an arrogant aura, his anger was about to burst out of the universe. On the contrary, He Woody was very calm. In his opinion, as long as his opponent did not lose to the other contestants, it was only a matter of time before they met. After a few rounds of competition, there were fewer and fewer contestants left in the venue. When they entered the top 500, the streams of light surrounding the seated contestants gradually dissipated. One by one, the top geniuses seemed to have been unsealed and walked out. Pa! Gu Xiaoxi clasped his hands and said, "It's finally time to fight." His gaze was locked on Ling Li. The anger that appeared seemed to want to melt the other party. When Li Tian was being tortured, although he was not shown the camera, the anger in his heart did not lose to Yixingchen's. After all, as an elder of the sect of all times, trampling on his disciple was the same as trampling on himself. Similarly, the seated contestants of the Zhangyan faculty were also staring at Lingli. They all wanted to torture him. It could be said that when that guy said, "You can only fight for second place," he successfully attracted the hatred of everyone. This kind of hostile situation often happened to Jun Changshao and the sect of all times. Who would have thought that it would be snatched away by Lingli today? Seated contestants, enter the venue. Gu Tianqing said solemnly, "This is the true meaning of the competition." The martial artists on the spectator stand subconsciously stood up. Next, they would be watching every match intently. "Hey!" Jian Xiaohong walked in front of Zhou Hong, tilted her head, and smiled mischievously. "You're very powerful." Zhou Hong said, "Not bad. Can I spar with you?" At this point, Jian Xiaohong did not wait for Zhou Hong to reply. Zhou Hong was speechless. She called him a fool as if she was very familiar with him. But, after she tied her ponytail, she looked even cuter than before. Chapter 1810. On the stage. Sword energy crisscrossed as special effects were activated. At this moment, all the martial artists in the spectator stand stood up. Their eyes were wide open, and the shock in their eyes was unprecedentedly intense. From their point of view, the entire venue was filled with sword energy. Clang! Zhou Hong sheathed his sword and cupped his hands. "You won." The readers were definitely confused. He was still preparing to go on stage in the previous chapter, so why did he lose in this chapter? In fact, a battle related to the sword Dao was too boring, so the entire process was skipped. Everyone only needed to remember that after the two of them went on stage, they exchanged glances for a long time. Jian Xiaohong used the ruins of En swordsmanship, and the entire arena was filled with crisscrossing sword energy. The scene was so ugly that even the new artist who had just joined the job couldn't cry. Where was the old artist? Don't ask. If you do, you'll resign. Too amazing. Gu Tianqing stood up. Although the author skipped the battle process and the readers didn't see it, as the audience, they witnessed the gorgeous ruins of En swordsmanship with their own eyes. This was even performed by the granddaughter of the ruins of En Senior. If they were lucky enough to see the original body make a move, they would probably never forget the scene of sword energy. If Gu Tianqing was asked what the strongest sword move of the Blue Cloud sect was, he would definitely answer without hesitation the ruins of En swordsmanship. On the spectator stand, everyone stood up in shock from the sword technique. Only one person was sitting. That's right, it was Jun Changshao. At this moment, he was leaning back in his chair, weakly howling in his heart, "Zhou Hong is also acting as me." It was understandable that Su Xiaomo lost. But how could Zhou Hong lose? Among the core disciples he brought, the most trustworthy one was Yixingchen, followed by Zhou Hong. In the end, he was the one who acted the most ruthlessly. Whoosh! The ruins of En sword that had merged into the sky flew over and landed in Jian Xiaohong's hand. She sheathed her sword and smiled. "I was just lucky to win against you in terms of moves." Crack! Crack! The 10,000 swords shattered and turned into nothingness. Everything returned to normal. That's still a win. Zhou Hong walked down the stage. He didn't act. He had indeed lost in terms of sword moves. As a swordsman, a loss was a loss. This was something he had to admit. However, unlike Li Tian, who was still lying on the ground with a guilty look on his face, Zhou Hong, who had lost the match, did not take it to heart at all. Of course. There were also regrets. It was a pity that he did not manage to comprehend the third move of 10,000 swords return to origin, otherwise he would have been able to reverse his defeat. Hey! Jian Xiaohong shouted from behind, "My grandfather hasn't been able to find a suitable successor. Are you interested in becoming his disciple?" As soon as these words were spoken, the entire place fell into silence. Who was his grandfather? The ruins of End Sword Saint of the Zhangyan lineage. Not to mention youths with dreams in their hearts, even martial artists who had been famous for a long time would want to kneel in front of the door and acknowledge him as their master. Becoming the disciple of the ruins of Sinkhole Sword Sage was something that countless people dreamed of. Some people would even sharpen their heads in order to do so. Today, his granddaughter actually took the initiative to ask someone if she wanted to be his disciple. I'm so envious. Shua. Jun Changshao, who had been paralyzed on the chair, stood up. Not only was he revived, but his eyes were also filled with excitement. The fact that the organizers were willing to make an exception and choose an opponent for that woman was enough to show how powerful the ruins of End Sword Saint was. It was definitely a great opportunity for his disciple to become his disciple. Sorry. Zhou Hong stopped and said, I am a disciple of the Sect of all times. I will not acknowledge others as my master. Jun Changshao almost spat out a mouthful of blood. It was true that you were a disciple of the Sect of all times, but that didn't stop you from acknowledging others as your master. Strictly speaking, the relationship between a disciple and a patriarch was that of a superior and subordinate, not a master and disciple relationship. To this day, whether it was Li Qingyang or Xiao Ziji, they both called Jun Changshao patriarch and Rose of Flowers madam, not master or mistress. Of course, they could also be considered master and disciple. However, with Jun Changshao's personality, he would prefer for his disciple to call him patriarch. And in the sect, there was only one person who called Goxing master and no one would find fault with it. That was Lin Yi. After all, he was a proper disciple. Just leave a trashy sect, Jian Xiaohong said. Follow my grandfather and cultivate the way of the sword. It will allow you to peek into a higher realm. Goxing laughed bitterly. My sect of all times might not be the strongest in the entire upper universe, but at the very least, no one dares to provoke it. Yet, in the eyes of the Sword Saint's granddaughter, my sect is trash. Hee hee. As long as you're happy. Zhou Hong said, I respect you, so please respect me too. Don't humiliate my sect or else. He didn't finish his sentence, but his cold gaze said everything. Alright, alright. Jian Xiaohong jumped off the stage and walked in front of him. She made an apologetic gesture and said, I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing. Miss Jian. At this moment Jun Changshao said, if Senior Sword Saint likes my disciple, I will naturally be willing to acknowledge you as my master. Little Du jumped out at this moment and mocked Gosheng for being too realistic or for wanting to hug his thigh. But the truth? He was thinking for Zhou Hong. The sect of all times had many facilities and mystic realms that targeted martial arts. As a sword cultivator, Zhou Hong had been cultivating since he entered the sect. He was the only disciple who didn't rely on cheats and relied on himself to improve. Self-comprehension was rare and precious. However, if he had an outstanding master to guide him, he could at least avoid detours. A top sword master, the ruins of End Sword Saint, was clearly qualified. Idiot. Jian Xiaohong walked in front of him and casually placed her hands behind her back. She smiled and said, your patriarch has already agreed. Why don't you agree? Zhou Hong said, my name is Zhou Hong, not idiot. I know, idiot. Jian Xiaohong leaned her head over and said with a smile, when the galactic competition is over, follow me to the ruins of End World. Even the name of the world was named after the Sword Saint. He was definitely a big shot among big shots. It's settled then. Jian Xiaohong blinked and moved her body over. After it's over, I will go to the inn to look for you. Don't stand me up. Otherwise, I will chase you to the ends of the earth. Zhou Hong was speechless. Was there something wrong with her brain like the patriarch's? After the battle between Zhou Hong and Jian Xiaohong ended, it had to continue. During this time, the eldest disciple of the Daoyuan sect, Nangong Qinxian, fought. As expected of a seeded contestant, she easily defeated her opponent after going on stage. Number 7 Lu Qianshan, number 8 Ling Li, come on stage. With the referee's shout, the audience looked over. The adopted son of the heavenly devil emperor was very arrogant and had defeated 2 disciples of the sect of all times. Now that they met again, there would definitely be a good show. Whoosh! Lu Qianshan's white robe fluttered as she landed on the arena. Eldest senior sister. Yi Xingqian wanted to say that she would give him face, but when he felt the cold air, he immediately shut his mouth. Forget it, forget it. At most, he would go to the losers group to look for him. According to the rules, the top 10 in the competition would participate in the finals as the seeded contestants of the Zhangyan sect. The top 20 in the losers group would participate as ordinary contestants. Yi Xingqian's idea was very simple. Lu Qianshan defeated Ling Li. He deliberately admitted defeat and went to the losers group to trample on him. What a coincidence! Xiao Ziji and the others also had the same idea. Not to mention whether they could meet Ling Li in the losers group. If a core disciple of the sect of all times deliberately lost the match, the losers group would be filled with hidden dragons and crouching tigers. They were afraid that Go Sheng would not be able to handle the disciples acting and would die from anger. Chapter 1811. On the stage. Lu Qianshan stood proudly like a plum blossom in the snow. Thick cold air filled the air and a layer of ice gradually formed on the ground. Although the environment was as cold as winter, Ling Li, who was 10 meters away, didn't care. After all, he had an outstanding physical body and could naturally resist the cold. The referee saw that both of them had returned to their positions and shouted, "Fight, begin." Bang! As soon as the voice fell, Ling Li rushed over like a cannonball. Whoosh whoosh! At the same time, his right arm suddenly waved and a powerful energy shook the space, turning into a fist that passed through layers of cold air. He disdained to fight with a woman, so he decided to end it quickly. However, when the violent energy surged like a wave, the ice on the ground flickered and a visible cold air immediately appeared and enveloped the fist. Crack crack! Not only did the fist slow down significantly, but the surface gradually gathered ice shards and turned into a lifelike ice sculpture during the sprint. Pa! Lu Qianshan raised her flawless white hand and gently placed it on the ice. Crack! The frozen fist instantly shattered into pieces of ice. When the spectators saw this, they were immediately amazed by this woman's use and control of the ice element. Especially Nangong Qinxian. When he saw Lu Qianshan easily break the fist, he praised, "A rare ice cultivator." Ta! Ling Li stepped out and gathered violent energy to rush over. The ice element's function was to slow down and control, but he needed brute force to break it. Although this method was barbaric, it seemed to be the most effective. However, when he sprinted, the cold air was even stronger than on the stage. Pieces of ice stuck to his body, causing his speed to significantly decrease. When he sprinted in front of Lu Qianshan, most of Ling Li's body was covered in ice. Whether it was lifting his foot or his hand, it was abnormally slow and difficult. Kid! Gu Tianqing was surprised. Your disciple's control of the ice element is probably not weaker than the Daoyuan sect's eldest disciple. Of course. Jun Changshao smiled proudly. Lu Qianshan's screen time was getting less and less recently because she was obsessed with cultivation like Zhou Hong. Not to mention her fellow disciples, even he, the patriarch, rarely saw her. There was no need to say how strong he was. At the very least, his understanding of the ice element had reached the pinnacle of perfection. Shwa! Lu Qianshan raised her hand again. Her movements seemed slow, but when she hit Li Li across the air, there was an explosion. Ling Li remained where he was. Even though Zhang Xian had been sealed in ice and was unable to fly out, the impact of the attack had caused his blood to surge furiously, threatening to gush out from his throat. This woman's strength is too strong. Under normal circumstances, ice elementalists were mainly used for control and usually did not have brute strength. However, the pain that Lu Qianqian's long-range attack brought to Ling Li was no less than the sum of the damage that Su Xiaomao's previous kicks had brought to him. Shua! At this moment, Lu Qianqian raised her hand again and slapped her in the face. Ling Li was furious. This kind of attack was a deliberate attempt to humiliate him. Although he was angry, he couldn't move his body. Boom! 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 There was a huge commotion in the venue as cold air filled the air. The spectating martial artists endured the cold while witnessing the female disciples of the sect of all time slapping Ling Li's face from left to right. Because they used too much strength, there were no slapping sounds, but booming sounds. A moment later, Lu Qianqian stopped. Wah! Ling Li, who had been slapped dozens of times, could not hold back the blood and immediately spat it out. Spitting blood was a small matter. The important thing was that his meridians were damaged in many places, which greatly reduced his defense and made it difficult for him to break free from the frozen state. Eldest senior sister is ruthless, Su Xiaomao said to himself. When he fought with Ling Li, he had promised Yi Xingchen that he would hold back his strength, so the damage he could cause to his opponent was limited. Lu Qianqian was different. Slap after slap, those were all real. Not to mention Ling Li, even Jun Changshao would not be able to take it even if he used his face dozens of times. Would it be over just by spitting blood? No. It was just the beginning. Boom! 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 Lu Qianqian was still standing in the same spot. Her palms fluctuated in the air, gathering the power of extreme cold again and again to blast Ling Li's face. This battle was not fancy. There was only one person who seemed to be punished to stand, while the other was slapping his face crazily. The spectators' mouths twitched, and they turned their heads away, unable to bear to watch. Puff! Puff! Ling Li's head turned left and right. Blood spurted out and dyed the ice on the ground red. As for how miserable his face was, it could no longer be described with words. Here, one had to praise Lu Qianqian's control of her strength. From beginning to end, her opponent stood on the stage like a sand sculpture and did not fly out due to excessive force. Was it déjà vu? That's right. Ling Li had previously ravaged Li Tian like this. He clearly could have defeated the other party, but he controlled his strength all the way until he exhausted the other party under the watchful eyes of the crowd. The spectating martial artists trembled in fear, and their scalps turned cold. The adopted son of the celestial devil emperor was very arrogant and strong. They never thought that he would be so badly beaten by a woman. Sigh. He shook his head. It was rare for him to be serious, but eldest senior sister intercepted him. Forget it. I'd better continue to keep a low profile. Damn it. Yi Xingchen clenched his fists. Although eldest senior sister was able to vent her anger by torturing Ling Li, it would definitely be better if it was him. Boom! 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 On the stage, Lu Qianqian suppressed Ling Li with absolute strength, torturing him again and again. The cruelty of the scene was indescribable. This tragic scene lasted for a full hour. If there was a timer, Lu Qianqian would torture him for as long as Ling Li tortured Li Tian. There was absolutely no difference. Of course. The time was the same, but the strength was different. When Lu Qianqian retracted her hand, Ling Li's head was still swaying from side to side due to inertia until it slowly stopped. His entire face was quickly covered with mosaic. The spectators shuddered. How could a woman be so cruel? Phew! At this time, the surrounding ice layer quickly melted, freeing Ling Li's body. He staggered backward and fell out of the stage. Awesome! Gou Xing laughed. At this moment, the outcome was clear. As long as that guy fell to the ground, the winner would be, While Jun Changshao was thinking, the smile on his face suddenly froze, because the eldest disciple in his field of vision jumped out of the stage. Thud. Plop. Lu Qianqian landed first, followed by Ling Li, Ga. The venue instantly quieted down. This. Gu Tianqing was also dumbfounded. The referee and assistant referees looked at each other, then hurriedly gathered together. Some put on headphones, and some watched the video replay. A few minutes later, the referee jumped onto the stage, made a professional hand gesture, and announced loudly, Lu Qianqian will fall out of the stage first. According to the rules of the Galaxy tournament, the winner is Ling Li. Pft! Jun Changshao directly collapsed on the chair, blood spurting out like a fountain. Chapter 1812. Lu Qianqian lost. This was because she landed at a faster speed than Ling Li. According to the rules of the main competition, if one could not determine whether the contestant had the ability to fight, they could only determine who left the arena first. Actually, based on the situation back then, everyone could tell that Ling Li had lost. He had even been beaten to a pulp. However, rules were rules. The audience exploded. She could have won. Why did she admit defeat? This sect of all time's disciples' actions were completely incomprehensible. Or, she wanted to leave it to the other disciples. Fine. She was not satisfied with beating someone alone. She wanted to continue beating her fellow disciples. However, this was the Galaxy main competition. Putting aside the possibility of advancing to the next round in the losers bracket, wasn't it good to be in the top 10 and be a seeded contestant? Look! She made Patriarch vomit blood. This is child's play. Everyone could not understand Lu Qianqian's act of admitting defeat on purpose. They even felt that it was completely unnecessary. Jun Patriarch, Gu Tianqing turned his head and said, "Isn't this too much nonsense?" Jun Changshao did not say anything. At this moment, he was being treated by Sun Bukong and was receiving a blood transfusion with a needle. Go Sheng could tell that the disciples were not here to win the championship in the Galaxy main competition. They were here to put on a show. Of course. Jun Changshao understood Su Xiaoma and Lu Qianqian's intentions. They could not accept Li Tian being beaten so badly. Therefore, they wanted to let their fellow disciples beat him one by one. However, forget it. If they wanted to play, then let them. If they lost, there was still the losers bracket. With the abilities of Lu Qianqian and the rest, there was no doubt that they would advance to the next round. If they could beat that guy until he doubted his life and developed a psychological trauma, it would be considered as revenge for their disciple. In fact, Jun Changshao was afraid of being put on a show because of the epic mission. After all, at least 2 disciples were required to obtain the entry ticket to the holy battle. If they exceeded the requirements, they would be given more rewards. If the disciples were put on a show, if only a few of them advanced to the next round, wouldn't they be doomed? Damn it, Ling Li fell outside the fighting ring, his eyes filled with pain and anger. He didn't notice that Su Xiaoma had been sent flying on purpose, but this time, Lu Qianqian had admitted defeat on purpose. 3 words. He was unwilling to accept this. You are the foster son that I value the most. You must become the champion of the galactic tournament. His foster father's words rang in his ears. I can't lose. I still want to win the championship for my foster father. Can you still fight? The referee came over and asked. Who? Suppressing the pain on his face, Ling Li struggled to stand up and said, yes. Even though his injuries were severe, he still had a mission to fulfill. Even if he were to die on the stage, he still had to fight on. This wolf was very tenacious. However, the moment he got up, a group of lions looked over. Yi Xingchen thought to himself, if you meet me, I will make you lose the ability to speak. eldest senior sister purposely jumped off the stage, which made him very excited, because he had another chance to torture that guy. To be honest, Lu Qianqian's torture was already very fierce. However, in Night Emperor's eyes, it was not enough. Only by personally torturing him would the world understand how blissful death was. The competition continued. The disciples of the sect of all times fought one after another and won the competition smoothly. For now, other than encountering a few top-notch geniuses, there was no need to describe the other battles. The next round of drawing lots. Yi Xingqian walked down with his token. He stared at Ling Li until he was sure that he didn't get it. Then, he said hatefully, "I let him live a little longer." Senior brother. He Wudi walked over and said, "I got him." Yi Xingqian hurriedly turned his head and saw that this guy had drawn number 2, which happened to match Ling Li's number 1. He couldn't control his emotions and shouted, "Fuck," in the fighting ring. Following the referee's shout, He Wudi, who had number 2, went on stage first. Ta! Ling Li also walked up. Because he was tortured too badly by Lu Qianqian, he stood on the stage and swayed, his hands hanging down. "Are you sure you can still fight?" The referee asked again. "I'm sure," Ling Li said in a hoarse voice. He Wudi didn't say anything. He looked up at the patriarch who was transfusing blood and suddenly understood. At this time, if Gou Sheng knew what he was thinking, he would definitely roar, "I didn't give you any indication. What the hell do you understand?" He met a disciple of the sect of all times again. This guy is going to be miserable. In this state, even the most ordinary contestant can be defeated. Everyone discussed in low voices. No one thought that Ling Li still had the ability to fight. If he insisted on going on stage, he would definitely be tortured. Moreover, this He Wudi didn't seem to be simple either. Hee. Hearing everyone talking about him, Ling Li lowered his head and hands and let out a strange laugh. He Wudi frowned. "Do you think I don't have the strength to fight? Do you think I'm here to be tortured?" Ling Li suddenly raised his head, revealing an extremely ferocious face. He Wudi was silent for a while, then said honestly, "Yes." Ha ha ha. Ling Li covered his face and laughed until tears came out. As he laughed, his thoughts returned to his childhood, to the past when he fought for survival. This was destined to be a story that needed the animation team to fill in the memories, so the original work didn't say much. In short, according to convention, no matter if it was a hero or a villain, as long as they fought their way out of the memories, their combat power would definitely skyrocket. Whoosh whoosh. Sure enough, the swaying Ling Li's body gradually emitted a blood-like aura, and the tattoo on his chest also flickered. His eyes were as red as blood, his hair was as red as blood, and his fingernails became slender and sharp, as if he had turned from a human into a wolf. "This is," Gu Tianqing said in surprise, "the demonic emperor's bloodline?" Jun Changshao tore off the blood vessel, and his expression also became serious. That guy seemed to have suddenly gone berserk, which was very similar to his bloodline. Don't misunderstand. The system immediately explained, Gou Sheng had previously fused with the demonic emperor's bloodline. Please don't imagine that he is related to the demonic emperor. Uncle. Jun Changshao said, "How can an adopted son have the demonic emperor's bloodline? Anyone who survives the massacre and is adopted will be bestowed with the bloodline of the celestial devil emperor," Gu Tianqing explained. "I see." Jun Changshao held his chin and said, "So, he used his trump card?" "That's right." Gu Tianqing said in an unusually serious tone, "Although this child has only inherited a trace of the demonic emperor's bloodline, once awakened, his strength will increase tremendously. I'm afraid your disciple." Whoosh. Whoosh. At this moment, Ling Li's entire body seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Not only did he stop shaking, but he also straightened his back, his hair, eyes, eyebrows, and skin all turned blood red, looking very frightening. "Remember, I am Ling Li, demonic emperor's adopted son." At this moment, the fully recovered Ling Li was even more arrogant than before, and the powerful aura he emitted made many top geniuses tremble in fear. "Are you done?" Woody said with an indifferent expression. Whoosh! Suddenly, Ling Li turned into a red light and rushed over, shouting angrily, "Open your eyes and watch, and see who will abuse who in this battle." Whoosh whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! In an instant, a bloodthirsty wind swept up in the arena. Woody stood on the spot, his hair fluttering in the wind, and then, he turned his body sideways, clenched his right hand into a fist, and suddenly smashed down on the charging Ling Li. Boom! Ka ka ka. Ka 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 ka. The arena, which was reinforced by multiple arrays, collapsed instantly, and the surrounding ground spread out like a dense spider web, even extending to the spectator's stand, shocking the audience. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.